from Toronto to Tokyo, and from Thonia to Syrinx, this is The Basement, your companion to the Ready Player One novel. Join our hosts each episode for complete chapter breakdowns and deep dives into the pop culture references through a series of challenges and homework assignments. The Basement is the Ready Player One podcast for people who love things. And now, please welcome Albert and the rest of the Gunchers for this week's episode. Hello, Gunters. You are in the basement, and this is episode 0016, the number 42, or just 42. We're back to talk about the Ready Player One novel and chapter 16 of that novel. And joining me tonight, as always, is Mr. Will Wilkins.
Hey,
Dr. Will A-Bit, how are you doing, sir?
I am fantastic. What's up, Bert?
That is quite the background you got there, my friend. Is there anything you were going to...
No, it's very Max Headroom. That was brought up in this episode. So I was actually going to wear a suit to this episode.
And do the makeup and the whole...
But I was trying to figure out how I was going to do the, it's latex look in the suit. So I figured maybe if I wet it, I didn't have a really good idea for it. So I just decided I'll roll with the background, but I'm not going to dress up today.
Yeah. Probably better. You know what? We're going to actually talk about Max Headroom in a lot more detail. We're certainly going to cover it tonight, at least as a first pass. But we're going to talk about it a little bit more when we get to chapter, I think it's 18 or 19?
I think it's 19. Yeah.
19, yeah. So we'll you've got between now and then to get your act together, if you will.
I'll take that challenge. Okay. I'm in.
All right.
But I'm going to end up looking like Mr. Pink. I'm not like
from Reservoir Dogs.
If I put on a suit with a thin white tie and some sunglasses, I'm going to look more like Reservoir Dogs than Max Headroom.
Not a bad thing.
Sure.
Not a bad thing. All right, well, let's do this because I think even though this is only it's actually a relatively small chapter, not a lot of pop culture references. It feels like it is the very end of level 1, but there's some substantial stuff in here that we'll break down here in a few minutes. But quickly, let's do let's wrap up 13 through 15 as a recap, and I'm going to do my best to take 3 chapters and boil it down to like 2 sentences. As Wade tries to decipher the quatrain, he finds himself invited to visit IOI headquarters in Columbus, Ohio. He accepts the offer and is propositioned by IOI's leader, Nolan Sorrento, to join the ranks, which he ultimately turns down. In response to his refusal, IOI destroys his home, family, and neighbors in the stacks, sending Wade into a panic without any direction on what to do next. He calls together the scoreboard leaders, the High Five, to tell them what's happened and to warn them that they could be next. And that's that. We did 3 chapters of the last episode, so hopefully you guys caught that one. Let me give you the quick summary, and then we'll break down the narrative and get into all the pop culture stuff. So for this one, pretty simple. The scoreboard is filling up. There is more and more of these IOI jokers start filling up the scoreboard, and after they've cleared the first gate.
Or as I call them, the misunderstoods.
Misunderstoods?
They're misunderstood. We covered that last episode.
By the way, I'm wearing the Suxors t-shirt tonight. I said I was going to wear this last week, and I didn't do it, but I got that on today. All right, so these guys are filling up the scoreboard. And now with the death of his family, Wade is faced to face the reality of his life that it's forever changed. And he makes a really bold decision to head off to Columbus, Ohio. And essentially what he's doing is hiding at this point. He boards a bus, changes his identity, and moves into a single-room apartment in Columbus, determined never to step foot outside until he's found the egg. And so let's start with the first part of this. And Ernie Klein throughout the novel gives you the scoreboard. And this is the first time, actually this is kind of weird looking because it's now got all these IOI guys on here. They fill up the first 6 to 10 spots. Next thing you know, they've got the next 11 to 20. Then it's 30, and then within 24 hours, they've got like 60 slots or more kind of filled up. And I got this question out there because I probably haven't put a lot of thought into this, but I know it nags at me every time I read the novel. It seems like Halliday put in a lot of safeguards for people to not cheat, right? Whether that's PvP zones or non-communication zones. He empowered Og to kind of be the overseer of the game and ensure that the integrity of the game was in place and the rules were abided by. But it seems like this ability to kind of communicate within each other and help each other seems like it is a level of cheating that if there wasn't a technical way that they could prevent that, it seems like somewhere in the laws or the rules of the game, if anybody was to ever find out, or if this was going on, if there was any communication. It seems like that would be written in, and maybe I'm making an assumption that it's not. But any thoughts around that? Do you think this is? I mean, it doesn't feel like it's in the spirit of the game whatsoever.
No, definitely not. But I think it falls into what I would coin the matrix paradox, right? Regardless of the complexity of a system that you're working within, there's always going to be ways to circumvent the rules that have been established for the users to follow. So I think it's completely appropriate for, at the time that the game was designed within the Oasis, those probably were rules that couldn't have been circumvented. But over time, and with the advancements in technology, because I'm sure during that time they're finding creative ways to, circumvent more than just that system within the Oasis. So yeah. I think it was an inevitability. And I'm sure that Halliday even knew that it was an eventuality that the players would have to deal with in the future.
That's a good point. This is not a counter argument. In fact, I hadn't even thought about this until you just said it right now. But, when we look at like video games today, especially when you talk about competitive games or games that are deemed, pay to play, pay to win kind of games, anytime those things, there's exploits that are discovered or people are doing things, they end up updating the EULA, right? They just, and then you have to click and you have to accept a whole nother set of terms. And it seems like, and again, we're probably overthinking this, or at least maybe I am, but it seems like that would have been an easy way to prevent something like this. That says, okay, and the other thing is proof though, right? I mean, I don't even know that there's a way to prove this. And it's pretty much hearsay until the very end of the novel when it's all kind of exposed, but I don't know. All right.
Interesting nonetheless, but I look at systems, any system, as they are basically the Alamo, impossible to defend, easy to hit targets. Eventually, give it enough time and enough resources, you're going to find a way to beat it. Like you'd be updating the EULA in the Oasis like every 35 seconds. I mean, someone's got to be finding something perverse to be doing that probably wasn't in the spirit of the Oasis's creation.
Yep, no, that's probably a fair point. It's probably a never-ending battle to keep up with this stuff, for sure. And then the other kind of one of the other significant things is we get wind that now Ludus has just become so overcrowded with everybody, heading out there and trying to get through the Tomb of Horrors and get the copper key, or at least get the key to get to the gate. And so they end up standing up a Ludus 2, right? So they kind of move all the students from Ludus 1 over to Ludus 2. It does not include the Tomb of Horrors, so they don't have to worry about that. And school can just kind of go on. If it was funny that they shut school down for 24 hours in that event. And then from there, IOI sets up, and again, this kind of goes hand in hand with what I was just talking about, where it feels like there are certainly things that were not in the spirit of the game, right? Them going into a non-PvP zone, then setting up these double force fields, these teleportation disruptors. They had wizards casting this constant null magic zone so that, they were taking care of the science piece of it with these force fields, and then they were taking care of the magic component of it with the wizards casting these spells. And this prevented like nukes and missiles, and he says harsh language, which I thought was great. But again, it seems like they really kind of were exploiting this. It feels like it is an exploit. Like that doesn't seem like that was the intent of it. And this comes back a little bit later on, but nonetheless, they definitely were making a name for themselves that they didn't want anybody else coming onto Ludus, and certainly not getting to the Tomb of Horrors until they were able to get through and get the key, copper key.
Right. It seems like Ludus as a whole would just be some kind of no magic zone to begin with.
Right.
I mean, you can't have kids at school just freaking randomly casting spells.
Yeah, Harry Potter fans.
Yeah, well, my argument defeated.
No, I didn't mean that. I just meant it makes sense. Well, I don't know, maybe not. That's not what I meant.
There's not giant ogres running around
that's true.
on Ludus that I'm aware of, but I haven't read the sequel.
There's Gunter clans. They detonate an antimatter bomb, which again, this is kind of where the wheels are trying to come off the bus here a little bit, but they drop this bomb and blow up the force field, and at that point, since it's no PvP, right, they're able to kind of go in and start taking over. And so he mentions that there are some Gunters that eventually make it onto the scoreboard, albeit they're at the very bottom of the scoreboard because these guys have racked up the first 60, 80 spots at this point. And it's then that they've raided the tomb, and As a question there, so does non-PvP mean only player deaths, but ships were susceptible to destruction? Because he says the Gunters come in and they start blowing up ships and everything else. And so I'm trying to imagine this. Okay, so you're allowed to blow up the ships and like the materialistic type things, I guess. I don't know what word I'm looking over, but not the people. So what happens if you're in this ship and the ship's destroyed? Does the ship blow up and then you're just left there standing alone because you're in a non-PvP zone and you cannot be destroyed or you cannot be killed?
Yeah, I'm sure. Just like Ayakari Warriors, if you're playing like in God mode, if you remember that game, or Heavy
Yep.
Barrel, you're in a tank, but you're in God mode, and the tank explodes. You
And
just
you're
walk
still
away
standing.
from the tank and continue, rotating the gun using that ridiculous controller.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a good point. I like the reference too. Points to you, sir. For you're on top of your game tonight. Maybe not with the equipment there tonight, but
No,
you got the right
the
point.
audio it's struggling.
All right, from there we get into what I'm calling the cover up, and this was I think they did a really good job of visually showing this in the movie. But IOI goes through and they the explosion, they blow up all the stacks, and they plant this meth lab equipment in the wreckage, and sure enough, the news feeds pick this up. They immediately make an assumption that okay, yeah, this is typically what could happen, not likely to happen in the stacks. And it kind of just paints this picture that he really is kind of living in this dystopian world. I mean, it really kind of cements it that it is dystopian. It is the slums of the future, given that no one pays any attention to what's happened, right? This just seems like it's an everyday occurrence, unfortunately for him in the future world. And we get more of that too in this chapter, especially when he heads out and he's talking about, going to the Badlands and some of the experiences there as well. But I want to break away for just 1 second, and we'll come back to the narrative for sure. But I do want to mention, so the other show I do is called the Cantina Cast, and I'm not plugging the show, but one of the things that we do on that show is we really break down Joseph Campbell and Hero's journey and talk about the monomyth. And there are a number of characters throughout Star Wars that go through the monomyth and go through every one of the different phases, the different acts of the monomyth. And one of the things that really caught my eye as I was reading Ready Player One for the first time was that this does follow the monomyth almost to a T. There's certain pieces that are missing, but that seems to be the case. I mean, holistically, if you look at all of it, they touch on a lot of the main points, and but there are some minor things that it doesn't hit on for Ready Player One. But I want to do a show, Will, at some point where we kind of take this novel and overlay the monomyth on it and just kind of break it down and talk about here's this act, here's this piece, that sort of thing. But quickly for Act One, which is it's called a departure.
Will we be awarding college credit for that podcast?
We can,
your listeners.
Maybe
It's going to be fascinating.
Well, I think it'd be great. And so, and if you're not familiar with Joseph Campbell, he was a literary professor. He coined the phrase monomyth, and there have been variations of it thereafter. There's versions that are much more extensive. There are versions that are much more condensed and streamlined. But essentially what it says is that all the greatest stories, all these hero stories that we've witnessed, and whether it be TV, television shows, books, literature, whatever it is, they tend to follow a very similar formula. And it's almost an equation, right, of different steps that these characters go through. And for Joseph Campbell, the very first one's called Departure, Act One. The first one's called Call to Adventure, Refusal to the Call, right, et cetera, et cetera. Again, we'll break these down later on. Right now, I would say we're in the phase of crossing the first threshold. And if I could, let me just read that one. It says, this is the point where the hero actually crosses into the field of adventure, leaving the known limits of his world and venturing into an unknown and dangerous realm where the rules and limits are unknown. I mean, you think about it, it's kind of like, whoa, it's almost to a T. This is exactly what's happening. He's packing up, he's jumping into a bus, and he's getting out of, his normal world, and he's going into, heading over to Columbus, Ohio, where we know IOI exists, but also the Oasis. And just if I could, the next phase of the monomyth for Act One is the belly of the whale. And it says, the belly of the whale represents the final separation from the hero's known world and self. By entering this stage, the person shows willingness to undergo a metamorphosis. When first entering the stage, the hero may encounter a minor danger or setback. And if you just take a second to think about it, he's essentially doing that, right? He goes so far to go into the belly of the whale as becoming an employee of IOI, right? I mean, he enters literally into the belly of the whale at that point. So again, it's fascinating. If you get a chance, go read the rest of the acts for the monomyth, and compare them to the Ready Player One novel, and you'll see that Arnie Klein, whether it was consciously or subconsciously, definitely follows these steps of the different acts.
But there are virtually an infinite number of stories that follow the monomyth, right?
Yes.
So technically, Campbell didn't coined the monomyth. He actually coined the hero's journey. The monomyth predates him by about 60 years, but still, same concept. So you can tell that there was really two strong influences for the creation of the hero's journey. One was obviously Moby Dick. As you read through the monomyth, you're going to, just like Belly of the Whale is a reference to that. You're going to have we would have an infinite list of anything that's got a first person protagonist in literature is almost going to follow this in some way.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Even if from a very complex story to things as simple as Homeward Bound are all following this same pattern.
Yeah. Yeah.
Still,
what he did is he put structure around it. I mean, people were writing it. It's been done. The structure that he put behind it is pretty interesting. So the reason I brought this up, like I said, is because he does end up leaving for Columbus, Ohio. School, he takes his school-issued visor, his console, his gloves, a copy of the almanac, his girl diary, his clothes, his laptop, and that's pretty much it. Jumps into a bus.
It was a similar journey that Madonna took in the Papa Don't Preach video when she left the house.
Wasn't that, who was that dad? Lou Albano. Captain Lou Albano.
No. That you're thinking of Girls Just Want to Have Fun. It was, no, this is a different dude. What is his name? It wasn't Captain Lou, though.
Oh, yeah, I know who it was. It was, I can see him. He's kind of like the balding guy or receding hairline guy.
Yeah.
He was an actor.
Indeed, anyway. Sir.
Yes, he was. Okay, don't derail me here. Okay. I got a question, though. Why Columbus? I mean, outside of, it feels like it's, well, I think I know the answer to it, but
I think you know the answer, too.
I mean, he said he wanted the fastest, most reliable, and really the most secure, I think is the kind of the key point, right? He felt like at this point he was exposed. They knew who he was. He was trying to get somewhere where he could feel safe and decided that he was going to go there because he has a direct connection to them. He doesn't have to worry about IOI's influence and how many other ISPs or whatever he calls them they owned. And it is the Mecca, right? Given those two companies are there. But he leaves in that the bus, and he talks about the bullet. And we talked about this when we were talking about the Road Warrior and what do you call it, Mad Max, right? The bus itself is double-decker bus, bulletproof windows, solar panels. There's guards on the whole thing. It only goes 40 miles an hour, which I thought was weird, but I didn't think too much of that. And it essentially calls this a fortress, right? A rolling fortress, and he heads off into the lawless Badlands. And so, any thoughts around why he didn't fly? Because he did have money coming in at this point.
Yeah, the whole maybe for the same reason that people were taking buses about the time that this story was written. So following 9/11, the Transportation Security Administration set forth security policies requiring positive identification documents for aircraft, but not for ferries or for buses. So you could still kind of travel anonymously using those two forms of transportation. So maybe when he was formulating the books, he was aware of that and said, oh, yeah, he's going to have to take a bus because he's not going to want to use an ID, even though he had a fake ID.
But if he's being overly precautious, which you would expect him to do, he's probably going to do whatever he can there. All right. And then finally, this section's called a new identity and home. He gets access to these procedures for the, what do you call this? United States Citizen Registry, which I think is made up.
No, I think there's a thing.
Okay.
I'm not wearing my tinfoil right now, sir.
Get that on.
There's a thing.
There is a thing. And he gets this from the elite hacksawer's warehouse, otherwise known as Pirate Bay as we know it today. He replaces his existing personal data, so his fingerprints and his retinal scans. He puts those on his dead dad and then creates this new character called Bryce Lynch. We'll talk about a little bit later.
But just quickly here, didn't you think that was an odd choice? Like if you were
Bryce
going
Lynch?
to no, before that, that he takes the fingerprints and retinal patterns from his dad, exactly 0 degrees of separation. It seems illogical to do that. You should be doing someone who has no direct connection to you versus someone who's in your family. But maybe
No, your point's still true. What he does is he takes his existing fingerprints and his existing retinal scans. He puts them on his dead father. Then takes his new ones and puts those onto Bryce Lynch's. And so but to your point, if they're going to trace it back, it would seem like I would have picked just some random dead bloke, right? Rather than his father. I mean, it's kind of it's more meaningful, I think, and more personal to him, but he's a kid, so he's not going to be perfect at everything. But that seems kind of short-sighted too. I think I would have gone with something way more obscure,
Right. He could have just grabbed a couple of pairs of hands out of the stacks. There are probably body parts laying everywhere.
Yeah. There's an eyeball. Here's 9 fingers.
It's not even a matching set.
It doesn't matter.
Got 2 left hands. It's all right.
We'll do it. It works. And so he travels, and there's some great imagery in here in how he's describing his travels. And certainly as he comes up on Columbus, Ohio, and he mentions that it's kind of glistening there. He says, as I pulled off my visor and filed off the bus with the other passengers, the reality of my situation finally began to hit home. I was now a fugitive, living under an assumed name. Powerful people were out looking for me, people who wanted me dead. And he moves into, at that point, it looks like a Hilton hotel of some sort that's now been converted into an apartment complex. He's basically in a cube with one window. And at that point, he vows that he's never going outside until he's gotten the egg. And that's kind of how the chapter ends there. So, again, so any final thoughts before we get into the pop on this one? Again, really short chapter, I think, all things considered. And it's a nice bow. I think it's a great transition to chapter 17 and certainly level 2.
So from a literary perspective, this is my favorite bit of writing where it's all introspective. Mm-hmm. In the description of him leaving, being on the bus, and entering Columbus, that part is some of my favorite writing, because some of my favorite books are that way, where Ernie Cline typically, even when they went to IOI in the previous chapters, doesn't do a fantastic job, in my opinion, of painting the scene, right? He just gives you enough for you to fill in the gaps. But in this chapter, there was a little more care put into the description of the bus and what he felt like getting on the bus. For the most part, there wasn't a lot for you to absorb from a character development standpoint previously, but he did a much better job in this chapter, I thought.
Yeah, no, I would agree. It's still good. It's kind of a good, nice bookend, I guess, to the last chapter, which I thought was probably what we talked about last episode. It definitely was one of the best ones, if not the best in the novel.
And it also has this feel of, I love classic science fiction. Like, I love the golden era of science fiction short stories between the 50s and the 60s. Great writers during those times. And both of them followed a similar model. The end of level 1 feels like that. It feels like if this were a short story and it ended here, you'd be in pretty good shape. Plenty of stories are written where they're just open-ended, especially back then in the 50s and 60s. So I like the feel of that this almost feels like it could have sat on its own and just, you would have assumed that he would have completed the hero's journey, without you actually having to read about it.
Right. Yeah. No. And your mind's left to kind of think and wonder, okay, well, what happens next, kind of thing. Yeah, you're right. All right, let's get into the pop.
That's what I'm talking about. Let's go.
Let's play the feud.
Let's go. What's our categories today? Albert, what do we got?
Here we go. So here's let me read the first reference. It says, in desperation, the clans decided to break out the heavy artillery. They pulled their resources together, purchased 2 very expensive, very powerful antimatter bombs on eBay. And so I've got the eBay logo up here, and we're going to talk a little bit about the history. This was one of those things where I was like, I don't know how interesting I can make this. As I was digging into it more and more, there were some things that were like interesting, I thought, definitely worth talking points. And I think we all know what eBay is, right? It's an online auction website where you go out and you can pretty much buy anything you can possibly think of for a price, with some limitations, and we're going to get into the limitations here in just a minute. So originally this was started back in 1995. Started by a gentleman by the name of Pierre Omidar, I think is his name. And he was selling laser pointers, right? Broken laser pointers on his existing website. Didn't think anybody would buy one. Turns out somebody did buy one. He ended up calling that guy and was like, hey, did you mean to buy this broken laser pointer? And the guy said, yeah, I actually collect broken laser pointers, which I thought was bizarre. But whatever, to each his own, right? We all got our vices. Hookers, blow, laser pointers, whatever. But so he takes his idea and is like, wow, I've really kind of got something here, And he turns basically what became a hobby for him. His ISP calls him, or his website hosting company is like, hey, you're up the money. Your number of traffic is starting to increase, and we've got to bill you for this. So at that point, I think it says he started charging fees to kind of cover the costs of the additional cost that was being passed on to him by his web hosting company. And in 1996, so just a year later, there were 250,000 auctions in the whole year of 1996. In January of 97, this is like 1 month after 96, right? In January of 97, there were 200,000 auctions. So the trajectory of trajectory of this thing is steep, right? It's going crazy here. And by 1997, this is just simply 2 years after he took, started this thing, which was called Auction Web initially. He changed the name to eBay, and so I've got a picture here of, and it's very blurry if you can see that. And a lot of it's because these graphics weren't really large, right? I mean, you think about the internet back then; they were not big, high definition graphics. But that's the original logo there. Eventually, before it turned into eBay, and he sold this to. It became eBay. Originally, he wanted the name to be called Echo Bay Trading Company, and this was named after his consulting firm. I think it was Echo Bay Technology Group or something. Wherever he was working at, he kind of used that same name. And when he went out to go buy echobay.com, he realized that domain was actually already purchased and run by a mining company at the time. So he shortened it down. He shortened Echo Bay down to ebay.com, and that's where he got the name. Now, one last thing, and I'll got a question for you. Basically, 3 things kind of helped this guy kick this thing off. Right? The big sellers: plane tickets, Pez dispensers, and tie beanies. It took me forever to pick a Pez dispenser that I wanted to show until I ran across the alien head one, Pez dispenser. I don't know if that's real, but it looks really awesome. But
it looks awesome. The only bad news is that Pez are going to come out of it.
What's wrong? You don't like Pez?
Pez are just sugar. It's not even a thing. The flavor's just sugar. Pez is not a real candy.
I don't even think they have a flavor.
No, they have cherry and grape. They've got all kinds of flavors.
What?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe I've got Corona because I can't taste the difference in them. Or maybe I'm just buying the sugar flavored ones.
I think you need to just stop shopping at those kind of stores. Like step your game up. Go to a proper candy store.
Stop going to the Dollar General and picking these up.
Yeah. Are you getting the Pez with 2 S's? Because that's not a real thing.
Is it S's or Z's? I thought maybe that's my problem.
No, that was the joke.
Okay.
It's not funny if you explain it.
Exactly. Yeah, and then Beanie Babies, and I remember the Beanie Baby craze, right? This was everywhere. And, the company Tie, I don't know if it's Tie or TY. What is it? Do you know?
I think it's Tie Beanie Babies. But
okay. All right. Well, those guys had a website, and they were trying to allow people to exchange them. I don't know if there was fees or whatever on their website. It was really clunky. But the people that were really into Tie Beanie Babies found that eBay was a better option for them. It was much easier for them to do searches and purchases and all that. And so these 3 things right here really drove the business for a number of years. Now, of course, fast forward, these guys have, they've got a ton of money. They were operating in the millions of dollars, eventually the billions, whatever. But there were a number of acquisitions that happened. And some of these were interesting because I didn't half.com. Did you ever shop there? I did. And I didn't know that eBay bought them out at any point. I know I stopped shopping at half.com, but I couldn't remember why. And I don't remember when it happened. But they were bought out by eBay. They were bought out in 2000 for $350 million. I think everybody now knows that PayPal was bought out by eBay in 2002. That was for $1.5 billion. So you can see within 5 years, 6 years, they had enough cash to drop down. Well, maybe not cash, but they had enough capital to drop to $1.5 billion to buy them out. The Craigslist was bought for $32 million, which seems like a low number compared to some of these other ones. But not everybody's looking for prostitutions and stuff. So
easy.
Skype.
But I mean, really, if you just look at it from this way, acquiring PayPal was acquiring a bank essentially, right? Like a banking arm that was already making an incredible amount of money off of eBay. PayPal as a standalone company was making something in the range of 70% of its revenue off of eBay. So it was a natural marriage for them just to acquire the company. Whereas Craigslist, I'm not even sure how Craigslist is making cash. I mean, they don't get any either. Like, what is that? I
haven't been on Craigslist in a very long time, but I remember at one point, especially 2000, right early 2000s, it was like that was where you went to, buy things before even eBay.
So I got 2 listings up on the Craigslist right now. So if you're looking for a 55-inch Wega, I've got one of those.
A CRT or a CRT, or are you talking about like an LCD?
It's a old school. It's not a flat screen.
Like
it
a tube
is
TV.
Technically, no, it's not a tube. But
nah, you lost me.
Yeah. I also have 2 coffee tables out there, Albert, if you're looking for one.
We'll post it. We'll post a link in the show notes for anybody interested. eBay bought Skype in 2005 for $2.6 billion. Billion dollars, if I could do my Carl Sagan. They ended up selling that, though, and I didn't know eBay even bought them. I knew that Microsoft bought them. Everybody knows that story.
Yep.
But think about this. They sold for 2.6 to eBay, or to eBay, and then eBay turned around and sold it to Microsoft for $8.5 billion. So there was a $6 billion profit that was made on that sale. So not a bad chunk of change there for turning around that one. And then they bought StubHub in 2007, which I've only used once ever in my life. And the experience was actually pretty positive, but I just don't do a lot of concerts because I don't have a lot of money. But so yeah, in 2007, they bought StubHub for $310 million. And they've bought over 60 companies across the world. And that probably seems it seems like small potatoes, honestly, when you think about it, compared to like some of the bigger mega corporations that we know that have been around for a very long time. But nonetheless, in a short period in the span of time, they spent a lot of money on a lot of companies really quick. So it kind of speaks to the success that they've had that churned from a simple, auction web website back in 1996. What did you start using eBay?
So I started using eBay in 2002. And even in 2002, I would say it was a bit of the Wild West on eBay for those that are only used to using it, say, the last 5-10 years. There wasn't a lot of consumer protection. So like seller ratings and buyer ratings were incredibly important back then, because there wasn't a lot of control out there once you sent your information out into the ether. Once you sent that payment out, who knows what you were going to get. And there were, even back then, and YouTube was in its infancy, I would still watch videos of people who would buy things on eBay, open the boxes, and it would be like just a bunch of junk. It wasn't even what was listed on the auction, but it was something. My current profile. Anyway, I had a security issue with my eBay account, so I ended up closing that in 2012. So on my current eBay account, I have 998 verified transactions. So I'm 2 away. What's the most expensive thing you? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, what do you get at 100?
No, at 100. You get like different colored stars next to your name. It's worth absolutely nothing. But I'm chasing the 1,000 transaction star right now. So I need to buy 2 random things. I got my eye on this Nintendo controller I need.
So I would say, of those, how many are video games for you, though? All of them? 97?
No. It's not 100 transactions, Albert. It's 998 transactions.
Oh, my bad. Sorry. Yeah, that's to say, that doesn't seem like a lot of video
2012.
Games. Yeah.
And I would say of those, probably 250 of them are Nintendo related. So that includes like my Sharp NES television and some other things I spent an outlandish amount of money on.
Yeah. SP brings up a good point. I mean, having it does mean a lot, and and to your point too, I remember when, like you said, there was a time when it was very seldom that you would find anybody selling anything that would allow you to use a credit card, right? Mm-hmm. And if you didn't, it was either money order or you wrote a check. And I can recall the days of writing checks for people and sending them off. And so not only did you have to wait, you wait 7 days for the freaking auction to end. You go in there and snipe it with like 5 seconds left. Then you had to wait for them to, the whole process to take place, get the address, everything. You'd mail off your check. Then they would want you to wait until the check cleared so that the funds would clear. So that was another, 3-4 days after they received the check. Then they would mail this thing back. I mean, it was a month-long process to buy something from eBay back in the day.
It was. And if you were a non-verified buyer, it was even worse. It's actually, I hear, still kind of that way today. The acquisition of PayPal fixed a lot of that, but also created a different problem. And that's that. And this is I used to sell quite a bit. Like I would sell games out of my PS1 collection or my PS2 collection on eBay, but I don't do it anymore because 1, the fees have gotten outrageous. And 2, almost all of the policies now that PayPal's on board are consumer facing, not seller facing. So I think I sold a phone one time on eBay. It was in pristine condition. The guy got it and then claimed that it was broken. And even though I have no refund on there, they still forced me to give him a refund before I even received the product back. And so the whole thing for me was like, this has gotten ridiculous. It's not worth it anymore.
Yeah. Look at JR coming in with the Ready Player One references there. Bought a Starlog with Rutger Hauer, a lady cover, which I've seen that posted a number of times. Pretty glorious cover. Okay,
Nice.
let's talk about what you can and can't buy on eBay. So this was a very interesting section, and I read every single one of the policies on eBay as homework for this stinking episode. And some of this is pretty funny, some of it's maybe not so much. But wine is okay, and I've got this is a fine label here called Skywalker wine, which is true. It's actually owned by George Lucas, but the wine you can sell, but you can't sell anything else. So no hard liquor or anything else, right? Stuff you're drinking right now, can't buy it. You can't buy it online. Sorry.
Unfortunate.
Yep. So that's fine. Wine's okay. Everything else is not. They don't allow like unpasteurized dairy products, unpasteurized fruits, vegetables, vegetable juice. You can't buy wild mushrooms on eBay. So they're thinking ahead there on that one. No expired food, which I don't know, man. I've bought some things that were expired on eBay, and I guess they didn't catch them.
I gotta disagree with you on the whole thinking ahead. Almost every one of the prohibited items on eBay has a story of why it's on the prohibited item list. I mean, literally everything from human body parts.
Hey, you're still in my thunder.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go continue, sir.
No, you're fine. We're going to get into that here in a minute.
Just edit that out of the podcast.
We'll take it out. No, we won't. Government assistant benefited benefits. So no government cheese, no government milk, any of that stuff. Can't do that. Let's see. No firearms. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, right? No firearms, right. No weapons. They've got a knives policy that pretty much says if it's, unless it's decorative, and it's got all these. I mean, you can sell and buy certain knives, but it's kind of like a plane, right? You can take certain things on there and you can't. Similar. I found interesting enough though, and I thought this was kind of on point. I went and looked to see, okay, anybody selling a dice show, right? Because we just talked about that last chapter, and they're pretty expensive. This one here runs about $5,700. It dates back to the Edo period of Japan, so this would have been between 1603 and 1868, feudal Japan. Which I was thinking, man, if I had that kind of dough, I'd pick that up. Although there are some better looking ones that are in the same. I don't know if they're technically in the same Edo period, but this one was kind of a plain one, and unfortunately, it was the only picture that I grabbed. But
and unless you were an expert in all things related dice show, do not spend $5,600 on a dice show on eBay. You have lost your mind, Albert. Here's my advice to you, Albert, on eBay, being a seasoned veteran. One, you don't buy anything autographed on eBay. Nothing.
What?
No,
not real.
No memorabilia. No, just the probability of it being fake is incredibly high. Right. Same thing with antiques. Buy no antique online. It is, or eBay or anywhere else. It's just a bad call. It makes sense, but some items that are incredibly rare, and I'll go back to the NES world, right? Some of the Flintstones Adventure on Dino Peak is an incredibly rare Nintendo game, and at any given time on eBay, there's 60 of these incredibly rare games for sale by the same sellers, right? So unless you actually take that card apart and take a look at the chipset, there's no, and you can, trust me, if you're a proper nerd like me and you have the chipset serial numbers that were issued by Nintendo, there's no way you would know. And these people are out there spending $5,600 on dice shows that are supposed to be eons old when there's some dude pressing 20 of these out an hour.
Yep. I sold a copy of Earthbound for the Super Nintendo I think it was last year. Yeah. And it's been sitting literally in a box. It'd been in there for years and years. And I don't have a Super Nintendo, haven't played it. And I was holding on to it because I really liked the game. And then I found an emulator and I was like, okay, I'll just stick with the emulator. I don't need to hold on to it because it's just taking up space. And so I was like, I'll just put it on eBay. Let me see what it sells for. Well, first off, the cart alone sells for a pretty big penny. I was pretty surprised how much it sold for without having a box or anything else. And I found a number of people interested. It sold for a lot of money on eBay. And when I was all said and done, I was like, okay, I'll just put it in an envelope and ship it off. This guy gave me a list of things that he was going to clear before he would release the funds and all this stuff. He wanted me to take pictures. He was asking me to take it apart, take pictures of the chips. And then even after that, I was like, I'm not taking this apart, dude. I said, if I take it apart and I break it, then I don't have anything to sell. We went back and forth like for 2 weeks, me trying to convince him that I'm an honest person. I have nothing here. This is literally a game I found. I gave him like my background. I used to work at a video game store. I'm a scoutmaster. I mean, whatever I could do to like.
I'm a scoutmaster. Go with it.
Go with it. Whatever I could do to like, just give me my money. I'm not here to scam anybody. But it didn't dawn on me, and as I started doing more research, that the the effort that people go through to make counterfeit games now is absolutely mind blowing. And it just speaks to the big demand, I guess, that's out there and the number of people that are getting scammed for games like that. But anyways, all right. So back to what you can and can't buy. So no personal relationships. This is where prostitution comes in. You can't sell yourself. No dating, no sexual contract for escort services. You can't sell the ability to become somebody's friend on a social media website or a follower. You can't send like guaranteed followers on eBay. No personal advice, no coaching, no web traffic driving services as well. So all that's kind of under personal relationships and services. And the one that you mentioned earlier is the next one, which was the one I was the most interested in. And that was human remains and body parts policy. Like eBay had to create a human remains and body parts policy because people, I guess, have tried to send body parts in the mail. Now, what body parts? I don't know. I don't think I wanted to know. Today, it allows you to send like things like wigs and like locks of hair. You can go out there and buy like dreads, like real dreads, which is really gross if you think about it. Someone's hair that's just put in a bag and they ship it over to you. That's all good in game, but you can't sell fingers or I don't know what. You can put whatever you want in there, but you can't sell body parts.
But again, none of these were proactive measures. I mean,
right? They were
even the selling of relationships you could do on eBay until 2004, right? So in 2004, that story blew up where they had, I don't remember what college she was from, but some chick was selling her virginity, auctioning it on eBay, and had like all of these millions of dollars that were getting put forward. It was crazy. And then after that, they implemented this system. So it's not like eBay decided they were going to be the pinnacle of morality and they were going to police.
Right, yeah.
It was eventually CNN was showing these stories and they had to make a change. So I'm sure there's some kind of kidney story behind that where somebody got a bad kidney or belonged to a goat or something.
Yeah, I would agree. You're right. These are all reactive policies, I'm sure. There's
JR wants to know if you could sell dinosaur bones. You said you read the whole list. Can you do that?
What about, no, it's Stargate. What about dinosaur bones? Yeah, I think you can. It says human remains and body parts only. It doesn't. So it'd be good, interesting to look that up. I don't know if you can buy like animal remains. Who knows? Let's see what else. There was a woman in Albuquerque, New Mexico, back in 2012 who put on eBay her soul. So she was trying to sell her soul on eBay. I think she had opened the bidding at like $100. It went to 105. She got up to like 405, and they finally stepped in and said, "No, you can't sell it." And so the policy, the reason why they pulled this down, if you read the policy now, it says eBay does not allow the auctioning of human souls for the following reasons. If the soul does not exist, eBay cannot allow the auctioning of the soul because there would be nothing to sell. However, if the soul does exist, then in accordance with eBay's policy on human parts and remains, we would not allow the auctioning of human souls. And then this like spokesperson for eBay, when he was trying to explain this policy, said the real problem then, eBay spokesperson Kevin Pergsglove said, he told a newspaper at the time, is that the seller has to be in a position where you can deliver what you sell. And this seems like they're really getting into like lawyers speaking the stipulations and the rules and that sort of thing. But the fact that somebody did try to sell their soul and actually had a bid going before they intervened says a lot about what people are willing to sell on eBay.
Even better, what are these staff meetings at eBay like? They're like, well, we got another one. Someone trying to sell their soul. Get Bobby and Jimmy in here. We're going to walk through the paces and see what we can do.
Get a whiteboard in here real quick. Stat. Here's the article from 2012. It's a very interesting article. This lady's obviously crazy. She's got a few screws loose up top. And this was the most expensive thing ever sold. This was the Giga yacht that was sold or bought by Russian billionaire Roman Abramovich, I think is his name. He owns the Chelsea football team, and that's I didn't even know he bought this thing. I knew this thing was sold at some point, but he is the one that ended up buying this. $168 million for this 400-foot yacht. It has it's got a helipad on there. I don't think you can see the helicopter. I think it came with a helicopter that lands on the background. It is pretty extravagant, I will say that. If I had 168 million, I might drop it for this thing. It's pretty impressive nonetheless. But this is the most expensive thing. And there have been a lot of other things that have been sold in the $400,000, $500,000 category. There's not many, though, believe it or not. I thought for sure there would be like these crazy, even like some of the vehicles you find, like the really expensive automobiles, most 250, 300,000, they kind of peak out at that amount. But this is by far, I mean, there's it way beyond anything. Like second place is well back there in terms of how much these things were sold for.
What's the most you have ever spent on an eBay auction?
I bought Panzer Dragoon RPG for the Sega Saturn.
Nice. That's a great game.
Yeah, it is.
We used to play it together.
I think I bought that, and I had a copy of it. I sold it, and then, of course, I wanted it back. I maybe spent like $175. Not much. I don't really buy a lot of things on eBay, to be honest. I don't spend a lot to begin with. Like, this microphone is the most expensive thing I've bought in years. So, but
not mine.
Yeah. No. What about you? What's the most expensive thing you've bought?
I don't know.
Can you say? Did you violate any policies?
Oh, no. I've never violated a policy. I would say that Sharp TV was a couple of grand, but I mean, it may not be the most expensive thing I bought on eBay. I'm trying to think through it. Maybe that is. I don't know. And just for the record, following up on the question, yes, you can sell dinosaur bones. Although there was a huge petition by archaeologists to stop that in 2019 because they were like raiding freaking these dig sites, all these eBay dudes, because at some point there was a baby T-Rex listed for like 2.95 million on eBay.
Really?
Yeah. And so once some of these dinosaur bone sets started selling for pretty big dollars, they just started destroying all these preservation sites and the attempts of making their riches. Wow. There's bones within their hills.
Paul Moore says the most expensive thing he bought is the Shore Trooper helmet, which that helmet is one of my favorite helmets from Star Wars. Bought that for 350 pounds. Let's see. SP, thank you for doing the conversion rate. 336 million or 300. Wait, what?
That's not right. No, the conversion on 350 is about 475 US.
Okay. What do you got there? SP 336 million. Explain yourself. I'm not sure what you're doing there.
The taxes on the boat would be 300.
Oh, is that what he's figuring out? The taxes on the boat?
Yeah, because you'd be paying luxury tax on it, so you're going to pay like 33.5% plus a penalty on the sales. So
this guy know how to party or what? Okay, all right. Let's do.
Hey, let's talk about the tax code.
Tax codes are next.
Is that covered in this chapter?
Exciting episode of Ready Player One. All right, let's move on. We're gonna get off eBay here. Let's talk about this here thing, Max Headroom, and this will be so again. If you didn't catch the part at the beginning of the show, Max Headroom comes up a little bit later in chapter 19. There's a lot more that we'll get into. And but I thought we'd at least break the seal here and kind of talk about Bryce Lynch. And here's the reference. I deleted my fingerprints and retinal patterns, then replaced them with those of someone deceased, my father. Then I copied my own fingerprints and retinal patterns into a completely new identity profile that I'd created under the name Bryce Lynch. I made Bryce Lynch 22 years old and gave him a brand new Social Security number, an immaculate credit rating, and a bachelor's degree in computer science. And this Bryce Lynch character is lifted directly from the 1995 one-hour film called Max Headroom, 20 Minutes into the Future. So before we get into this, well, had you ever seen this, or at least did you see this when it came out? Have you ever seen it? Well, I hope you did because I asked you to watch it. That's part of the homework. But what was your, experience before this episode?
Yeah, so first of all, this was largely a BBC, well, not BBC, Channel 4 in the UK creation. So no, I didn't see the movie when it first came out because it wasn't technically aired in the US when it came out. And even when they made the miniseries that spanned, what was it, from 86, 87, something like that, they only used little tidbits of the show from them. So I did find this, I would say 2002 is when I found it online, somewhere about there where I actually watched the background story. And I had I didn't know it existed, right? But, and at that point, I was exactly that many years old when I found the name origin for Max Headroom.
I see. Yeah. So do you remember a guy, he was one of my friends. I think we may have hung out with him. You may have hung out with him too. You remember Mendo?
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. So
and he always carried around like a wooden katana.
Yeah.
Was that guy?
There was a phase he was going through where he was carrying that.
Why? We were grown ass men at that point. There's no reason for that.
He was eccentric. But one of the things he did is he opened my eyes to a lot of things. He opened my eyes to different anime than what I had been watching growing up. And good anime. I don't mean like slutty anime. He introduced me to like Hong Kong films, which I can't thank him enough for that. The Killer, John Woo, Chow Yun Fat, Danny Young, or all those guys. I'd never seen any of that stuff. Like, it was just completely mind blowing to see all of that. And he also had a lot of these films like this on VHS that were copies of copies of copies. He would go to these trade shows and literally trade VHS copies of rare, things that were like 1 hour movies, 2 hour movies, stuff that never aired over here. He had a copy of the original Transformers movie on VHS that had the original curse words in it. And that was something you couldn't get anywhere for a number of years until I think Canada, or one of the companies in Canada, did a VHS release in the mid-90s. He had a VHS copy well before that. There was a copy off a Laserdisc from Japan that had the curse words in it. The point is, he had this, and I saw it with him once, and I absolutely loved it. Never got a copy of it, but I never saw it again, and it was because it never got released again. And I don't even know. Like, I didn't get a chance to do the research. I saw this and watched it as part of the preparation for this show on YouTube. But I don't think you can still purchase this. Maybe you can. Maybe you can buy this and download it somewhere legitimately. But it was very hard to find for a number of years, and my guess is it's still the same way. But so this is, again, quickly, 1 hour show done in the UK. It was written by Stephen Roberts. It was directed by Rocky Morton and a woman by the name of Annabelle Jankel, I think is her name, or Jenekel. It stars Matt Frewer, which we'll talk a lot more about him in Chapter 19. He plays Edison Carter. He also plays Max Headroom, the actual Max Headroom character. Nicholas Grace as Grossman, Amanda Pays as Theora Jones, who's really just, if you look at her, she looks very much, and I've got a picture here. You can kind of see her here. I don't have her in her trench coat until a little bit later, but she looks like April O'Neil. And I wonder, and I didn't dive into this, but I wonder if April O'Neil was inspired by Theora Jones. April O'Neil was a news reporter. These guys are news reporters. She's got a trench coat on, really big, oversized trench coat. It looks very similar. But anyways, so that's Amanda Pays.
I don't think April O'Neil wore a trench coat, at least not the cartoon character. I think there's an adult film star that may have worn, named April O'Neil, who may have worn a trench coat at one point.
I don't know. I may be conflating the two. You're right.
I haven't seen her entire her entire catalog.
Let's see. There's a number of other characters. Morgan Shepherd as Blank Reg, and there's a bunch of other people that we won't get into. All right. So the concept of Max Headroom is pretty straightforward. I think it's a fascinating series. It really is, and I do love this movie. For a movie that, they had a pretty good budget. HBO is actually one of the companies that funded it, although to your point, it never actually released here. HBO is the one that put a lot of money up front, and there were a couple of other people that chipped in to kind of get this off the ground. But really what it's about is this character here. You can see him, this character of Edison Carter, who's a news reporter, takes place in this dystopian type future. And he uncovers that the own company that he's working for, which is Network 23, has created these television ads that they take a 30-minute television ad and they condense it down to 3 seconds. And there are certain people, there's a certain percentage of population that when they watch this ad, they spontaneously blow up. We get to see this in the video, which is hilarious. And so he's onto something here. And so the executives at Network 23 find out that he's getting really close to this. And so they take him out, essentially. They hire this kid named Bryce Lynch. And Bryce Lynch is like, they let him know that, hey, he's the one that created these ads, these blipverts, right, is what they called him, that these blipverts are killing people, and that this reporter is coming on and getting close to it. Well, this kid who, is pretty neutral is like, well, just kill the guy, right? Kill him. Get rid of Edison Carter. We don't have to worry about this. We won't be exposed. And so they go after him. They knock him out, and they decide, well, he's really known, popular, kind of a popular person. What are we going to do? People are going to notice this guy's missing. So he has this idea. Well, I can create a digital 3D persona of Edison Carter, and we'll just download his memory, download all of his thoughts and everything, brainwaves as data, feed it into this character, and that'll be the Edison Carter, and people won't know any different, right? That was the big plan. And then through all of this, Edison Carter gets away. At one point they try to kill him. He gets out of there. He comes back, and at the very end of the movie, and I'm kind of fast forwarding here because there's a lot, but he exposes the network for what they did. This character does get built in this television 3D world, and that becomes Max Headroom. We get the name Max Headroom because at one point he sees a barrier crossing sign, and I'll show you all this here in a second, but barrier crossing sign that says Max Headroom, was it 2.3 meters, right? Mm-hmm. That was his last image. And so when this 3D character came out with all of Edison Carter's memories still in there, the first thing out of his mouth is Max Headroom, Max Headroom, Max Headroom. And so they think, oh, this must be his name, Max Headroom. that's kind of the origin of Max Headroom. That's kind of the origin of Bryce Carter. I'll kind of go through these, but give me your thoughts here, I guess, on, how did you enjoy this film? I mean, did you like it's pretty condensed and there's a lot of content. There's a lot of things they lay down here that come up a little bit later in the talk show and then the TV series, which we'll talk about when we get to chapter 19. But there was a lot of I guess, world building that happened in this little short film.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, originally the writers weren't out to write a movie in the first place, right? They were actually just trying to build a backstory for the television show that they were trying to create.
Which was like it was supposed to be like an MTV video show.
Yeah, it's going to be these little 5-minute segments cut between videos where they were going to have a talking head of some sort there. So as they built this backstory, that's where they came up with this idea for the film. I didn't know any of this at the time, right? I found all of this out much, much later in life. So I always felt that Max Headroom was pretty one-dimensional. It was a one-trick pony. It was okay. It was like a light version of Robin Williams and a precursor for what would become Jim Carrey. And then I was like, I dismissed it. But when I saw this, I'm like, okay, that gives way more substance to the character. So if you're rewatching that through that lens, I think it's a much better product. I like this. It's great.
Yeah. No, I love this thing. This is the character of Bryce Lynch that you see on the screen here. I think in the he originally at least when they were drafting the script, he was supposed to be like 13 to 14-year-olds, 13 to 14. The kid we see in the movie is probably a little bit older. I'd probably peg him somewhere between 15 to 17 maybe. And then obviously the identity that Wade takes is a little bit older. I think he made himself like 20 or 21 or whatever we just mentioned here on it. But this is the kid that created the blipbirds that eventually kill you. There's some great stuff in here too, like a lot of the special effects, or I guess the CGI. I don't know if you want to call it CGI. It wasn't CGI. It was computer graphics. Let's just leave it at that, right? It was pretty good. I think, especially since 1985, that was pretty expensive. And I think originally there's a story. They wanted to do a full kind of 3-dimensional character of Max Headroom, but it was just too cost prohibitive, right? Their budget was already exceeded more than what they needed to. They had to go back and ask for even more money to kind of round this off because they hadn't put all the cameras in yet. And it's got like this Aliens kind of feel where you can kind of see the character and you get to see their name up on the screen, all that. Like you can see Carter and et cetera. But they needed more money. And so just from a cost perspective, this was way too much to do kind of like a full 3D. And so what they ended up doing was just using practical effects, right? They changed the background. They had a single light source for Max Headroom, which I'll show you a picture.
But the reason I think it comes off so convincing, all of that, is because these people were capable of it. I mean, they came from IT backgrounds. These were people that understood both commercials, because there was a group that had a commercial background. One of the partners was an IT guy. One of them had been involved in video game design. So they knew what it would take to animate. So I think that's why Max Headroom comes off as convincing as he does, because the creators knew what it would look like if they were to create it using, the limited technology they had back then.
Yeah, and I think some of it too, in my own personal opinion, like Matt Frewer and he's not like, to me, as when he's not Max Headroom, he's not the best actor, right? He's not like a Academy Award winning actor. But when he's Max Headroom, it's pretty darn convincing. Like he really envelops that character and embodies that character. And what he did was really truly groundbreaking, and it really created a lot of things, from whether it's the Coke commercials later on, the TV series, obviously the pop culture references that we are now. He made a name for himself as this character of Max Headroom. This is
annoying though. Like you can only watch so much Max Headroom. I challenge you to try to watch all of the late night with David Letterman interviews of Max Headroom back to back to back to back to back. You will eat a bullet before you finish. There's no way you can do it.
That'll be the challenge when we get to chapter 19. This is the Rebus tape. So that was the tape that someone had made that shows the chubby dude blowing up, which I've got a picture of here. This is Zigzag. This is the commercial. One of the sponsors that had created one of the blipbirds. So they took a 30-second commercial, condensed it down to 3 seconds. Here's more of the computer graphics that they used throughout the movie. The bottom right-hand corner is an animated GIF. That's my favorite because you can actually see him blowing up. And so, and the way that they explain this technology is, you've got all these like electric synapses in your, or whatever, in your body or on your skin, right? And they discharge naturally and normally. However, when somebody watches this blipvert, it triggers the mind to suddenly ignite all of them at one time. And it tends to be more people that are more sloth-like, lazy, don't do anything. They're more susceptible to spontaneous combustion. So here's the ramp that so Edison Carter, there's a scene in here where Edison Carter is driving on his motorcycle, and he's and Bryce Lynch and Theora Jones, who's the woman here, his partner, Theora Jones, are going back and forth, and they're like in the computer, and they're both battling each other to lower and raise that max headroom barrier. And she ends up winning. There's a lock that says, "Oh, she locked it in place so he'd clear off and wouldn't hit it with his head or whatever on the motorcycle." And so he decides that he's going to go ahead and just lift the ramp up at the last second and send Max or Edison Carter flying, and he ends up hitting his head on that max headroom sign. So, and here's the sign. So this is where we get the name max headroom, right? 2.3 m, 2.3 meters. Later on, Blank Reg, who has his own television kind of show or whatever, he ends up thinking that's 2.3 million, meaning 2.3 million viewers. And so long story short is Max Headroom becomes really popular, and they think that he's popular in that he has 2.3 million viewers. And so they end up putting that show on their little network. And that's little
interesting factoid on the Max Headroom that, in 86, when this became so popular that you no longer see these signs that say Max Headroom. They replaced them all with maximum height or maximum clearance because people were stealing
them.
Yeah.
Yep. You can't have anything nice in this world these days. And there he is right there. And again, like you can see there's a single, and to your point, like they did a great job. You can see there's a single light source, right? And you think about CGI at this time, there was only a single light source because lighting is very, it takes a lot of computing power to kind of display a lot of true light and angles of light and all of that. And then his suit is all kind of prosthetic, plastic. They did a lot of makeup. They elongated and really brought out a lot of his bone, like his features, made them more block and more computer.
So this is from the movie, right? The image that you're showing is from the movie.
No, this is a literal copy screenshot from the Max Headroom 20 minutes in the future.
That's what I'm saying.
All of these
it's from the movie.
Oh yeah, no,
because his
right,
prosthetics change in the later TV show.
Yes.
They're far more
advanced,
pronounced.
Yeah,
like his chin feature is far more squared. He takes on far more of an Aryan vibe. And in fact, even the producers allude to that in some of their making, is that we wanted the audience to be comfortable with Max Headroom, but also he should always come off slightly offsetting. Like it just doesn't seem right. Similar to a nod to the propaganda films of the 40s.
Yeah. I got a couple more here.
He's hitting all the Aryan wickets. That's all I'm saying.
Yep. This is towards the end of the film when they realize that big time TV. Max Headroom says that a lot, but that is that's the channel that Blank Reg, the older guy with the mohawk, that's his channel, and it takes off. Right, he's got his own kind of independent TV show that he's running out of the back of like a bus or a Winnebago or whatever the heck he's driving around in. These are the executives finding out that their ratings are dropping and big time TV starting to take off because of Max Headroom. Here's April O'Neil, I think. Yeah, I don't know what's underneath. It doesn't seem like there's a lot underneath that trench coat. But this is when they're at the very end of the movie where they're calling out Grossman, who's the owner, the executive person in charge at Network 23. There's Bryce Lynch. They're kind of caught. And Bryce Lynch, actually, his character, so to kind of bring it back to the novel so we don't get too far into Max Headroom itself, but to bring it back to the novel, Bryce Lynch, he comes across early on in this movie as a little snot-nosed kid, really smart, arrogant, that kind of thing. When he's double-crossed, essentially, by Grossman, it kind of humbles him a little bit. And that character actually turns out to be kind of a, I wouldn't say heroic character, but he's not the same kind of character when we get to the TV series. He actually is helping out Edison Carter and Theora Jones and some of the new characters they introduce. He becomes like the Q or the technical expert or the computer expert later on in the TV series. So he's not really necessarily a good guy, but he's not the evil bad guy that they kind of make him out to be through much of this film here.
And I believe he's the only actor that doesn't make the transition. Like the actual actor didn't make the transition from the TV show. So they got Chris Young, I believe, to play him on the TV show, who is now a senior vice president at Nickelodeon.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, and so this kid was Paul Spurrier. Sorry, I forgot to mention his name. Paul Spurrier is the one that plays Bryce Lynch here. But so again, to bring it back to the novel, this fits pretty well in hand, right? You get it now. Ernie Klein was thinking, okay, I've got a kid. He's going into live alone. He's smart. He's a genius kind of kid. There's another direct tie that we'll come to here in a little bit. But this is where he based the character off, was this kind of prototype character of Bryce Lynch in Max Headroom.
There's a lot of similarities between this movie and Ready Player One. I mean, if you just look at, obviously Channel 23 being IOI, this television's being an extension of what we look at virtual reality today. I mean, because everything that virtual reality in the book is criticized for, which is the same thing that internet usage is criticized for today, is the same thing that television was criticized for in the 80s. I mean, most people forget that there was a time where people thought that that's what was killing our youth, was people just sitting there and receiving this information through televisions and not being interactive. Right. So it's the messaging of this story to me follows pretty similarly to what we're seeing in Ready Player One, even as much as what's his name driving around and running his radio station from the back, much like H does throughout the book.
Oh yeah. Good catch there. Yeah, very similar. He's got his own thing, doing his own thing there. All right, so as kind of part of this, right? I want to do a little bit more and talk about secret identities, because that's essentially what this is Wade is now a secret identity in Bryce Lynch. But I'd ask you to look at a couple of different examples, in realistic examples, real history examples where people took on these secret identities. Did you have anybody in mind, like anything that came, anyone that I sent you, or did you have any others where someone took a secret identity, lived that for a number of years, and eventually came out or was exposed in some way?
I don't know that I can narrow it down to one. It seems like that's the topic of at least every fourth documentary I watch on Netflix. It's like somebody turning out to be somebody you didn't think it was.
Yeah.
I mean, except for maybe the Tiger King. He was the same dude the entire time.
Well, here's one that I thought would be close to our hearts for a lot of personal reasons. So this is Sergio Gutierrez Benitez, right? He's a guy in Mexico. Yeah, there you go, Benitez. He ran a small orphanage in Mexico. He got into some drug trouble when he was really young, I think around the age of 20, and then he tried to turn his life around and went into the priesthood. He became a very devout priest in the Catholic Church by day, and then by night, he was going out and he was a lucha libre. He was going out and doing wrestling. And this is obviously his name. When he was out doing the wrestling tactics, he was known as Fray Tormenta, which means Friar Storm. And that's the mask he wore there. That's him without his mask. And then I don't know if this is real or not, or somebody.
Real.
Is it real? Okay.
That's
so
real.
I think at some point he was, giving out the Holy Eucharistic. What is this? I forget now.
Wow.
Yeah, no.
What's happening? What's happening up in Austin? I remember when we used to go to church together.
Yeah. I don't remember what this is called anymore. Eucharistic ministry? I don't know.
That'll work. You're
Yeah,
probably
okay,
thinking communion is the word you're probably looking
communion.
to.
Thank you. Yeah. But he would give communion with the mask on. So eventually he kind of came out, and everybody was surprised and in wonderment and all that. But all right, so no big shock here. This is the inspiration for Nacho Libre, which was a great movie. So many great lines, so many people that I can relate to as my personal relatives. Like, I watched that movie and I'm like, oh, there's Uncle Juan and there's Aunt so and so. But this was where that movie got its inspiration. But it's funny that I hadn't really known that Nacho Libre was based until the movie came out, and it was even after that I realized I read somewhere that it was based on a real life character, but I had never really done the research and dug into who he was and the life that he lived. But a very interesting one. There's a personal story as well, and I'll make this really short because we did talk about this back on the "You Have Chosen Wisely" episode of Ready Player of The Basement. There was a oh, look at this. Hold on, sorry, that's a great one. Body slam of Christ. There is there was a
hey, save me some of that delicious corn. That's my favorite line.
These are the Lord's chips. I have had diarrheas for. Okay, so Morgan Marshall came on to the show, and she did this great thing. And we told the story on the show when she came on, but she created an Instagram account about a year before Ready Player One came out. She called it James Halliday, and she would just post things on Instagram about Ready Player One and 80s trivia and 80s pop culture and that. And she gained a huge following. Never once did she disclose that she was female. And she waited until the day of the Ready Player One movie and did a live stream or whatever. And she announced that, hey, I'm going to reveal who I am, that kind of thing. And I thought it was really great. And it was one of the inspirations for me asking her to come onto the show and be a part of the show, because I followed her, didn't think one thing and the other. I didn't really care if she was male, female, or whatsoever. I just liked the stuff that she was posting. And I don't know. I always assumed that she was a dude, right? Because there was nothing for me to think that she wasn't. And the cool thing is she didn't change. I mean, she still does all the same stuff. And I think that was her point. She really wanted people to just accept her for who she was, what she liked, the stuff that she was posting. And when she came out as a girl and did this live stream, all of those followers, myself included, were just extremely surprised. So I thought it was really cool that she had the secret identity that she lived, I guess, if you will, for almost the better part of a year prior to the Ready Player One movie coming out. So good job, Morgan. I really enjoyed that. Okay. Anything else before we move on to the next segment here?
No.
Okay, fine. Let's get into our next reference. Again, we'll come back to Max Headroom when we get to chapter 19. So this is The Wizard of Oz. And it says, let me give you the reference, and then I'll kind of turn it over to you to kind of talk about this one. But it says, finally, after it felt like we've been crawling along the highway for months, the Columbus skyline appeared on the horizon, glittering like the Oz at the end of the yellow brick road. All right, tell us about Wizard of Oz, or do you want me to give you the basics? And
No, I thought you were going to go ahead and give us the overview.
All right, so Wizard of Oz.
Hero's journey.
We're going to start with the hero's journey. Yeah. I don't know if I need to explain the Wizard of Oz, so I probably won't do that. But just some of the facts. Wizard of Oz came out in 1939. It was directed by Victor Fleming, stars Julie Garland, Frank Morgan. I was going to come up with funny names like we normally do for all these people, and I don't know. Like those names are only funny if you have a frame of reference or relevance, right? And I don't, because you're so old. But Frank Morgan, Ray Bolger, Bert Haar, Jack Haley, Belly Burke, Margaret Hamilton. These guys all sound familiar. Like you know them because their names have been said so many times over the years. Charlie Grapevine and a lot of little people throughout this movie. The synopsis, and this is from, I got pulled this again from Internet Movie Database because I think those are hilarious. Dorothy Gale is swept away from her farm in Kansas to a magical land in Oz in a tornado and embarks on a quest with her new friends to see the wizard who can help her return home to Kansas and help her friends as well. If you read that, you wouldn't even know there was an Oz, right? It's like it makes no mention of any of the magical aspects of the movie, which I think is funny. This thing received all kinds of technical awards.
Did it though?
Well,
so it was one of the first Technicolor films, but the Academy largely ignored this film. It really it won 2 Oscars this year, but only for best score and best original song.
Yeah,
I think so. This wasn't even the first Wizard of Oz film, right? There was actually this is the 10th Wizard of Oz film that was put, on celluloid, but the first that was done in Technicolor, which was huge. It was going to be their first big movie, and frankly, it was a flop. The production was $2.3 million to produce, and it barely broke even. Like this movie didn't really hit popularity until it was aired for the first time for free on television in 1956, I believe it was.
Yeah, it was like almost 60s, I thought.
Yeah, like right there in that range, and had a viewership of 44 million the first time they aired it. So they aired it a couple of times. Then they started airing it annually. It just became part of tradition. Yep, and at that point, everyone now thinks of it like, oh, it was this huge classic that, was successful when it first came out, and it wasn't. And it probably wasn't successful, Albert, because of the numerous health code violations that occurred in the filming of this movie. All right. But before we even get into the health codes, let's talk about pay equity, right? So for those that don't know, Toto, right, and I don't remember the real dog's name, but I'm sure everyone just called him Toto after that because that's what happens. So he was paid $125 a week to make this film.
That's a lot of money back in 1939.
It was. The average little person in this film, what do you think they made, Albert?
$138.
No, $50. $50 for a small human and $125 for a little Scottish Terrier. Does not make sense at all. Not good pay equity. In fact, if you listen to the song "If I Only Had a Heart" that the Scarecrow sings, at one point you can hear someone in the background. Now, in the background, say, "Wherefore art thou, Romeo?" Sings it. That's the original voice actress from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. She was paid a straight G just to say that one line. What? So, Yeah. In fact, the pay structure was so unfair that it led to the creation of a advocacy group called Midgets of America. And I'm not making that up. That's
Really?
now Little People of
Is it like a
America.
union that they created
Yeah.
or something?
Yeah, it was like an actors union. In fact, there's some backstory told about that in a film from the 80s. It was a 1984 film. And I don't know if you've ever seen this. Have you seen the movie Under the Rainbow?
No. So I've heard of Over the Rainbow. Obviously, I've seen that a million times.
Yeah.
I've heard of this movie. I have never watched it because it didn't, as far as I remember, it didn't have any relationship to Over the Rainbow.
Well, it has no relationship to reading Rainbow either, but
Yeah,
you don't
very
have
true.
to take my word for it. Anyway, yeah, so that movie's the backstory of what it was like being a little person on the set. So now Albert's showing us a picture of the most beautiful Julie Garden.
Yeah, I got a couple pictures, and then I want to get to some of the pictures that you provided to kind of go hand in hand here. And I just pulled some of these out. I mean, so to your point, it didn't do as well, and people seem to hold this movie in a really high light, right? Right or wrong. I can tell you right now, this is like mom's favorite movie. And growing up as a kid, we were like brought up and raised to look at this movie and think it was amazing and wonderful. And I always had a problem with the movie because it scared the crap out of me as a kid. Even, because it was her favorite movie growing up. And she kind of threw it on us, forced it down our necks at a very, very early age. When we get to the flying monkeys and the witch dying and all that, I'm out. I mean, even the tornado scared me as a kid.
No,
we were living in Michigan.
The transmutation scene of that chick into the Wicked Witch of the East.
Yes.
That is the stuff of child nightmares.
Absolutely. I didn't even get that one. That's a great one. I forgot to include that. This scared the crap out of me. This is the witch turning in from the bike to the broom.
Right.
Here are the red ruby slippers.
We do know that is the Wicked Witch of the East based on the shoes that she's wearing in that frame.
Thank you.
So,
clarification. Yep.
Hey, those shoes you showed? Those were originally silver. They only went with ruby because it showed off the technical abilities of
Technicolor.
Yep. You can see them at the
first film
Smithsonian.
in Technicolor. I think there was one more before, or at least around the same time. I do
believe there was one, but this one had the M. Night Shyamalan twist in that all of the trailers were held in black and white.
Yeah.
And so until you got to that scene where she opens the door, boom.
Got you.
Mind blown.
They did a lot of backdrops too in this movie, and as a kid I never noticed them. As I got older, they kind of stand out. Have they ever gone back and fixed this?
They did. They did a digital remaster, but because of an issue we'll probably talk about in a later frame.
Okay, hold on. Hold that thought. Yeah, this scared the crap out of me here with the witch melting and dying, her screaming. I mean, she did a great job as the Wicked Witch of the West or East or whatever the hell it is.
She played both of them.
Yeah. Here's the cast. I mean, they're iconic images and iconic figures and all that too.
Absolutely. I'm not sure that those the PETA folks would be cool with that. I mean, that's actually lion pelt that entire costume was made out for.
Was it really? They spared no expense on that one. That's for sure. This was like one of my favorite parts because there was something technical that was going on in the movie. So, and then here, and this was the to me, this is always the best part of the movie when you realize, because the beginning you almost get kind of lost. It's, again, first couple viewings, you're not paying attention. Maybe it was just me as a kid and being stupid, but I never put two and two together until this scene happens in the movie. And you're like, holy crap, these are all the same people in the movie. And I think that's one of the cool magical things about this, but seeing all of them without their makeup. And I swear to God, the guy in the far right, I forget which one he is. I think he's the Tin Man. He looks like Jimmy Fallon to me. He always looked like Jimmy Fallon.
So there was a lot of setup for the characters in the original cut, like beforehand, where you'd actually see the characters interacting with Dorothy before the whole thing with Toto running off and her seeing the salesman. And there is an alluded to love interest between the Scarecrow and Dorothy at the front end, and at the back end it seems a little creepy, but he's supposed to be going off to college. There's a long piece of dialogue. That dude looks way too old to be going to college. he's going to night school, that guy. That's community college.
That's probably true. What am I looking at here? What do you got here?
So this is one of the many OSHA issues that they had while they were on set. This is a picture of Buddy Hackett, who is from Beverly Hillbillies fame, as the Tin Man. So he was originally cast as the Tin Man, but he had an allergic reaction to the makeup that actually contained silver oxide, which is not good for you. So he had to drop out of the role. Unlike the Wicked Witch of the East and West, whose makeup contained high content of copper, so much, in fact, that when they did the smoke scene with the red smoke, it actually caught her makeup on fire, and she ended up having second-degree burns on her arm. It took her 6 weeks to recover, right? That doesn't count the number of monkeys that fell from their wires and were injured during filming, or the horses of a different color that were painted with Jell-O throughout filming. There was a lot of things. In fact, even the scarecrow, the prosthetics he had on his face, were glued to him so strongly that the indentations of them lasted a year after filming.
That thing was not coming off, right?
Yeah, it's there for good.
So which was more egregious in terms of like animal rights and the abuse of animal rights, this or the Beastmaster?
Beastmaster all day. Beastmaster, you couldn't make that film today. There's just no way.
Oh, all right. We're gonna get into a little bit more trivia here. This is kind of like the legacy and the impact, but yes. Yeah, go ahead.
So this is my favorite legacy and impact. So I don't recall. Maybe you and I did this when we were in high school, but Dark Side of the Rainbow is my favorite conspiracy theory about Wizard of Oz. In fact, I would say in the last 15 years, I've seen Dark Side of the Rainbow far more than I've seen the Wizard of Oz. And so for those that don't know, because I guess like younger people don't know, I don't think my oldest daughter even knows that if you have a copy of Dark Side of the Moon
by Pink Floyd,
right, by Pink Floyd, and you start that record or that tape on the third lion roar, right? Turn the volume off.
MGM logo.
Yep. Third line roar, turn it off, start the music. It will completely sync, or at least you can be convinced that it completely syncs to the film. I mean, to the second when the door opens to the Technicolor portion, that's where money starts. And that, I mean, as soon as the door opens, you start hearing the coins dropping and then money starts. And when she's doing Over the Rainbow and her head's going left to right, that's the part where you're getting the left-right effect of the helicopters flying over. I can't remember what song it is early on, but there are whole websites that draw all of the connections between Wizard of Oz and Dark Side of the Moon. So have you done this before?
Yes, I have, and it was a really fun experience. Like it changes it changes the view of it. I mean, I don't know. I'm probably not expressing this the correct way, but I'm not going to say I enjoy it more than the Wizard of Oz, because I do like the Wizard of Oz. I've come to like it a lot more as an adult than I did even as a kid.
Really?
It's kind of weird. Yeah.
I liked it equally.
But I have done this before. And I want to say we talked about this on one of the episodes of The Basement. In fact, I think we did a number of other examples where they call these movie syncs, right? Where you can take an album and sync it. And I don't want to rehash everything, but there was like 2001 and there's a song called Echoes. There's a Brick in the Wall and Wall-E. Have you done that one before?
Yeah, I've done that one. But let me be fair. You don't have to do these anymore, because I didn't do the Wall-E one. I just watched the sync on YouTube.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. Somebody's done this for you. That's a good point. You don't have to go out there and do it. But the one that I really like, and you're going to hate me for this one, was the Alan Parsons Project, where they did Try Anything Once with The Last Crusade.
Really?
Have you seen that one? Yeah.
So I do hate you for that, for bringing up Alan Parsons again. But you know what? Interestingly, I was going to bring up Alan Parsons because he was the sound engineer for Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
And he said this whole thing is BS. He hates all of them. This.
I thought, aren't they on record as saying this was not? I mean, it's a coincidence, and it's a
total coincidence.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But it is crazy how well synced this thing plays out. Yeah. Go check it. Go watch a YouTube video. What are we looking at here?
Oh, so this is the cover of El Dorado by Electric Light Orchestra.
Oh,
so we were just looking at, I think we were just, you and I, talking through what are some of the cultural influences that still seem to resonate or resonated throughout the 80s related to the Wizard of Oz. And this was certainly one of them.
Yep. ELO's a great band. And then you've got, I don't know what's going on here. Is this somebody hanging back there?
So that is the conspiracy theory that is a munchkin hanging back there. So this is the original VHS release, along with the original, I think Laserdisc is even like this, where there is a silhouette in the background on the scene where they're going down the yellow brick road, and there is an assumption that this is a munchkin dead, right? Started this whole big conspiracy theory. It was even really popular in the 80s. I remember watching like PM Magazine. They had like an episode that did it, or Unsolved Mysteries or something.
So, if you or anyone you know, I'm Robert Stack.
But it's actually just a bird. So in the remastered, you can actually,
huh?
they animated the bird so that you could see that it was just a...
How the heck do you get a bird out of that?
So it's like this long-legged stork, right? So you can just, it's got a fat body, but really thin legs.
Huh.
And it's got a little headdress looking thing on it. It almost looks like a bird of paradise kind of thing.
Okay. I'll take your word for it.
And then I'm sure you've seen this before, right? And this is the... You go ahead. I'll let you talk to this.
No, other than I know people have drawn parallels to this, and there's been talk about whether the Wizard of Oz influenced Lucas in his creation and everything. I take this back to, like we talked about earlier, it's like the monomyth. Like this, there's a formula that the Wizard of Oz follows, and there's you can point out certain acts that movie goes through in the monomyth as well as Star Wars, and so there's a lot of similarities there for sure.
Yeah, this one's more fun because they both have a Tin Man. I think that's what makes it. And then there's a Toto and an R2, and you know, they both have a furry character. But I do kind of lend some credence to this. Of course, it's actually usually promulgated by Star Wars folks that are out there saying this. In fact, there's been a lot of discussion about how the Wizard of Oz is really the story of Rey as of late. But I think that's just because it's the parallel de jour of whatever they're trying to draw between the two.
Yeah, no, I get it. Is that Carrie Fisher?
I don't know. I haven't seen this movie. Right? I never
you
saw
haven't
it.
seen it? I thought you were. Yeah,
I know. I watched the trailer and was like, okay, that's a thing. That's a thing that happened. That's not Fletch.
I think it is Carrie Fisher, if I'm not mistaken. Again, and as being a Star Wars fan, you'd think I would hope I would have seen this movie, and I've never seen it. Yeah, if anybody's seen it out there, either on live chat or drop us some comments, let us know. I probably won't have time to go back and watch it, but I don't know, that little guy in the far right hand corner there with the hat and the wicked mustache and goatee, he's kind of inspiring me to watch it.
Well, you can get him to your house for $50 American a week.
I stuck this one in here because you didn't put it in here.
Yeah.
I snuck this one in.
There's no way you thought I didn't know that the Wiz was a thing.
No, I'm not saying you didn't. There's plenty that we didn't include, but
right.
I had to put this in here because
I hate this.
I love the Wiz. Like I was more into the Wiz in the late 70s than I was the original Wizard of Oz, and it drove mom nuts. But He's on Down the Road, man, get out of here. I can sing that song all day.
Okay, so yes. He's on. Now name another.
No, I can't think of it. I can't.
Exactly. I love this film. It's fantastic. I can name 6 songs from The Wizard of Oz. I can only name He's on Down the Road.
He's on down the road.
It's fantastic. You sing one more bar, this place is going to go broke. You're going to need.
I actually don't know another bar either. So, and Michael Jackson was in this one too.
Yep.
Okay.
Still terrible. That's terrible.
Okay, we're going to talk about a super exciting topic here, Hilton Hotels. And the reference is, finally, the cab pulled up in front of my new apartment building, a slate gray monolith on the banks of the, is it Scioto?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll go with it.
Just at the edge of the Twin Rivers ghetto, I noticed a discolored outline on the building's facade where Hilton logo used to be, back when the place had been a hotel. So again, this was the place that he moved into, used to be a Hilton Hotel, converted. And I thought, well, let's just talk about Hilton Hotels. And I didn't know where to go with this one. We were talking about this before the show and leading up to this episode about, I had Paris Hilton in here, and I thought, I really don't
Man.
even want to talk about Paris Hilton, but I didn't know where to take this. And thankfully, you came through because you are well traveled. You've done a lot of this stuff, so you've got this exciting topic. Go ahead and give us. I've got some slides for you. We'll talk about the history of Hilton hotels.
Yeah. So some background on the previous slide. That the picture that you're showing now is actually the Hilton Post Oak Hotel, which is right next to the Galleria in Houston. So I'm a Hilton Honors member. During Hurricane Rita, I was a platinum diamond member. I'm currently a gold member. I'm probably a silver member because we're not traveling due to COVID. But back during the hurricane, we were actually staging here before we deployed out to the field. So being a diamond member, I go to check in and they're like, "Oh, Mr. Wilkins, I see that you were a diamond member. Well, you're going to be at the penthouse on the top floor." And I was like, "Fantastic. Well, we're just going to be here a couple of days until the storm passes, and then we're going to be leaving." So I go up to the top floor. I'm looking over the city. You can see the storm coming in. It's a great view. And then I went to bed and woke up and we didn't have power. And so I had to carry all my luggage in the dark down the fire stairwell, all of those stories with no air conditioning. And I almost died. It was... And I remember telling the guys that I was traveling with at the time, but hey, man, I'm a platinum member. I'm up in the penthouse if you guys want to come up. And then that morning, they're all eating their breakfast because they were all down on the ground floor like commoners. And I'm just drenched in sweat. Hey, how's it going
rises,
there, hero?
By the way, heat rises.
Great job there, hero. I hope you enjoyed it. But anyway, Hilton, one of my top two favorite hotel chains, Marriott being the first, Hilton being a close second.
So wait, let me pause you there. So what makes them stand apart then? Because I don't know the difference. I go to a Motel 6, and if I stay at a Hilton, maybe I've never stayed at a Hilton. Maybe I just don't know. What am I missing that I don't get like at other places?
Oh, that's a good question. So I think if you were looking at it purely from a room perspective, I think they are all pretty equal. It is a Samsung versus iPhone discussion. What are you looking for? I think the culture for Marriott employees historically has been higher than Hilton, but as of late, that hasn't been the case. In fact, this year, Hilton was named the number one among Fortune 500 companies, best companies to work for. So both of these stories, both the Marriott story and the Hilton story, follow similar lines. These are American success stories back when you had salt of the earth people being entrepreneurs and building businesses the right way. Now, I would say the difference between Conrad Hilton and Marriott, Marriott's founder, is that Conrad Hilton was far more faith-based. A lot of what he did followed around his Christian faith. He was generational. He wasn't, in my opinion, as much of a capitalist as the Marriott side, but they're both fantastic. I'm either going to stay at a Marriott or a Hilton, and Marriott always gets the slight edge, but my reasoning is purely economic. Their point system's better than Hilton's.
Oh, I see. Who is this here that he's married? That's
not actually his wife. That's
mistress?
No,
daughter?
Ann Harris, a famous dancer and celebrity at the time. So when this guy formed Hilton in 1919, his dad before him actually ran a general store out in Cisco, Texas. Him and his family are originally from Socorro, New Mexico, and did a lot of business in San Antonio, New Mexico, not San Antonio, Texas. But he tried his luck at everything: singing, dancing, military, being a banker, until he went to Cisco to go buy a bank. He was turned down. He was staying at a hotel and noticed that the lobby was packed. And he was like, well, what am I going to do next? And he made an offer on the hotel he was staying at for $40,000, bought it, and then said, hey, look, these hotels, these flop houses that people have, they're just basically rooms to rent. If I chunk a bar into this bad boy and I throw a restaurant in here, I'm going to make way more money. And these lobbies, and you might recall that back then, hotels had these grandiose lobbies, huge amounts of space. And he was like, nope, I'm going to cut this thing down by 2/3, add a bunch of rooms to it, and I'm going to make even more money. And he did. Yeah. He started making a ton of money. He slowly started growing his business into one of the largest companies in the world. And he continued to work in this capacity until his death. And for every hotel they opened, every Marriott property that was opened, he would go out
Hilton.
and do every Hilton that was open. Maybe he did for Marriott too, but don't quote me on that. But he would go out and do this dance, right? So that was his thing.
Wow. And they've got a lot of locations. I mean, I see Hiltons everywhere, honestly. They're all over the place.
Yeah, they're big moves. So I would say the two biggest moves for the Hilton, for Conrad Hilton, was one is that he bought the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, which was huge news. It was global news when he made that purchase. And the second was the acquisition of the Statler Hotel chain. And at the time, that was the largest hotel company in North America. And that acquisition represented the largest land transfer in North American history, second largest land transfer in North American history after the Louisiana
Purchase. I was going to say that was a pretty big one, but
yeah, right after that, there's this.
That's nuts.
Yeah,
absolutely nuts. Oh, we're getting into some of the pop culture stuff. So
yeah, so I found I've never actually before I saw on the show notes we're going to be talking about the Hilton. I was like, wow, I know that Hilton's featured in a ton of movies, right? Especially a ton of 80s movies. It's featured in Risky Business, which we recently covered. It's famously covered, at least the, what's the name of the one in Miami?
Risky Business.
Fontainebleau?
Oh, I have no idea.
Yeah, that one in Miami. To Live and Die in LA, Red Heat. Recently has been in Godzilla, My Best Friend's Wedding, Primal Fear, The Bodyguard, Spider-Man 3, The Amazing Spider-Man, Michael Clayton, Blue Hawaii with Elvis. Hiltons are all over, modern media, but it's also in a lot of media as not real hotels. Yeah. And this was probably the first not real Hilton that was featured in cinema that I could find anyway.
Yes.
And that was Space Station 5's Hilton.
2001.
2001. Look at that bad boy.
Oh, man, this is like one of my favorite movies all time. I've seen this movie so many times. And it's one of the only films that, so when you say that, I'm thinking, wow, really? All those films had Hiltons? I never realized it. This is one of them. And you got another one in here that I'm familiar with, but it was only because you put it in front of my face. But this, and then there's other people in here, like in 2001, they used like, what is it, Pan American flights or something like that? I can't remember the airline.
And multiple pins. There's a lot. There's a lot of product placement in 2001.
Yeah,
but I think it's just isn't there like a TWA reference in there too?
Yes. Yep. I didn't realize they partnered with Jurassic World.
This is one of my favorites. They actually did a whole thing. They built a website. You could make these fake reservations at Isla Nublar. They would even like send you like this promotional room key. They said your room is ready and had the Jurassic World logo on it, which is
awesome.
Yeah, they went all out for that. That was a great partnership.
What are we looking at here? This looks just like a Hilton.
That's the Fontainebleau. That's the scene from Scarface.
Oh, gotcha.
That takes place at.
Nice.
And that's not the only movie. This is an oft-filmed hotel just because of its unique architecture.
Yeah, very unique.
Come on. Give me a room.
Give me a room. That's Arnold.
Yep. There's the distinguishable Hilton logo made a little bit futuristic. Ironically, that's not what the Hilton logo was at the time that this film was made. But
it is now, isn't it?
Pretty close. Resembles the logo they use today.
Yeah.
So as we get closer to traveling to Mars.
That'll be it. That's Total Recall. Yep. Cool. All right. Well, thank you for that. You made that way more interesting than it really was, to be honest. Let's talk about the number 42 because we're wrapping up the show here. And there's, well, let me read the reference and I'll get into it. So the reference says a green light lit up and the cage door slid open, allowing me to continue on the elevators. My apartment was on the 42nd floor, number 4211. And so this was one that anytime the number 42 comes up, I mean, you cannot help but think of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy or what's the baseball player? They just released a movie on Netflix. Is it Reggie? Oh, I'm drawing a blank on his name. But anyway, the famous baseball player. Those are the two things that always come to mind with the number 42. For me, I always instinctively go to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And we did cover this in an episode, so I didn't really want to get into all of that again, but just quickly, This is a number in the novel. It's known as the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. And in the novel, there's a supercomputer that's called Deep Thought, and he or she, whatever this entity, has been working on the answer to a question with the answer of 42 for like 7.5 million years. And this has been it gets used a lot. The number 42 gets used a lot in all of the Hitchhiker Guide to the Galaxy books and some of the sequels as well. It just gets repeated. What's fascinating is the number 42 comes up in so many other things in pop culture, and we're going to get to those here in just 1 minute. But I thought was really cool was this reference here, because it does draw back to the relevance to Max Headroom 20 minutes into the future, when early on, when Edison Carter is, at the very beginning of the movie, he's about to break this big time story. And this is what we talked about, where people were blowing up. And so he's sent out to this apartment complex, and he's supposed to go up there to investigate why this person was dead and why the cops were called in and everything. There seems to be a cover up. Well, anyways, he ends up going, he's traveling to the second floor, room 42. And so, whether Ready Player One and the Bryce Lynch character that Wade takes is a play on just the number 42 from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or it's a direct tie to the Max Headroom TV series or Max Headroom movie and the apartment number being 42. I don't know. You could make an argument for both of them, but there is a tie there, I should say.
I'm giving either one of those about a 4.2 if you were scoring from last week.
Oh, good job.
So I guess my issue with the 42 is that, well, you can't do that. Where's the 11 at? What is that? Because this one goes to 11, man. Is that why there's 11 on there? Because
maybe there is. Maybe it's 42 in the second.
Like, you can't parse out parts of it and just say 4211. Here's what I think the 42 means. Well, you're not allowed to do that.
No,
you have to get the 11 too. And
he went to the 42nd floor. That's the reference. Yeah. The 4211 is just the number, but yeah.
Jackie Robinson, not Reggie anything.
Jackie Robinson, thank you. I don't know where I was getting read. Jackie Robinson, number 42.
Oh, I know where you got it.
No, and there's a movie that I'm dying to watch that just came out on Netflix. I think it was released on Friday, just recently, like in the last week, about him. So, but here I thought we'd play a really quick game, and I know I've put you through some pretty tough games and some pretty easy ones. This is a very easy game.
Oh, good. My favorite.
Your favorite.
I am a doctor.
So that's where I'm going to ask you some questions. I want you to give me. I'm going to ask you some questions. I want you
to answer me honestly. Who is your daddy, and what does he do? My dad's a gynecologist. He looks at vaginas all day.
All right.
Okay.
more Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Stay on target.
Stay on target.
Stay on target.
All right. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to give me the answers to these questions. Okay, ready? How was that for a setup? Okay, in Alice in Wonderland, how many illustrations are found in the original novel?
Ooh, let me think.
Good one.
14. I don't know.
Have you been drinking? No, it's 42. I said this was an easy game.
Oh, is all the answers going to be 42?
Shh, don't spoil it. It's 40. My goodness, you need to put that bottle down. 42 illustrations in Alice in Wonderland.
How many rabbits in Alice in Wonderland? 42. 42, got it.
All right, the Mumford & Sons. I know you're a big fan of these guys.
I am, actually. I love this music.
Great. So this is an album called Delta. What is the name of the first track from this album?
I'm going to go with 42, Alex.
That's right, 42. Doctor Who had an episode called 42. How many minutes did this episode run?
Well, it says it on the picture right there. It says 42.
That's right.
Solar impact in 42 minutes.
IBM's AI entity known as Dr. Watson has how many threads of thought behind it? This is the one that they use in Jeopardy.
42.
Yes. Great.
Yes.
I was hoping to say you were 4 for 4, but you're actually only 3 of 4, but that's fine. All right, one last one here. Oh, one last one. In Lost, the Mega Lotto jackpot mega number was what number?
42.
That's right. 42 wins. That's it. Congratulations.
Nice.
You got 4 out of 5.
Hey, I got a
correct.
quick one for you then. You
Yeah.
ready for that? What's the address on Broadway for the primary filming location of Desperately Seeking Susan?
42.
4211. It's
Ah.
4211.
You think there's a tie there?
I don't know. Okay,
it is
here's
an
another
80s
one.
movie. It is an 80s movie.
It's true.
All right. What else you got?
What's the address of a home that's for sale in Wailahili, Honolulu, Hawaii?
I'm going to go with 4211.
What
I don't know where I got
the California Penal Code number for wasting water?
4211.
Correct.
Yes. I'll take obscure 4211 references for 1,000.
See, I can do that too. I've just like Googled 4211 and saw what came up and just said, uh-huh.
Yeah?
Uh-huh.
I got you there.
Let's do this.
All right. We're going to wrap this show up with Groucho Marx. And here's the reference. And so we're leaving. So in the novel now, we've left chapter 16, and we're in the middle piece here when it's got the level 2 beginning. So I didn't know if to put this on this episode or put it on the next episode. It probably makes more sense to be on 17 since it's the beginning of the level 2. But there's so much in chapter 17 that I was like, we need to move it over to 16 because it's going to be a long episode. But so the references, and this is in level 2, says, "I'm not crazy about reality, but it's still the only place to get a decent meal." This is a quote from Groucho Marx. And there are other, that quote obviously came up in the movie as well. It is one of the standout quotes in this novel and there's a couple other ones in here as well. I'm trying to think I'm drawing a blank right now on some of the other ones, but this one really stands out. And I've got, I really was trying to pull back on Groucho Marx because he is my favorite comedian, my favorite comic actor. And so I had to really pull this back because I knew we were going to get to the end of the show, and I didn't want it to be a 45-minute discussion. So let me give you a couple things about Groucho Marx just very quickly, and then we'll get into some of this why I like him. But so he was born in 1890. He was born Julius Henry Marx, October 2nd, 1890. He was the middle child of 3 boys. They technically, 5 boys. They had 6 kids total. If I remember correctly, the youngest one passed away at a really early age. Yep. Later on, they adopted one of their cousins, and she was the only sister that existed in the family. But so 5 boys, he was the middle one. And their parents were influential, trying to get them to do a lot of different things. They did stage, they did film, they were singing at one point. They were all talented and could play instruments of all kinds. The biggest example being like Chico on the piano, Harpo on the harp, which is where he got his name from. But I really feel like he is one of the greatest, comedians we've ever had, or comic actors that we've ever had. And I put him up there with the Robin Williams or the Tina Feys or the Peter Sellers, John Cleese, Chris Farley, Jim Carrey. These guys I have him up there with them. He is my favorite because even as early on, when I was really young, my mom and dad used to watch these. And I recall we went somewhere, and I know my first experience with it. It was Animal Crackers was the first movie I'd ever seen from the Marx Brothers. I was very young. We went to a hotel or something, and Dad put this on the TV, and I could not stop watching it. And I just cracked up ever since then. And this got me I then started getting into like Three Stooges, Laurel and Hardy, Buddy Hackett, a lot of all the old stuff that wasn't new at the time. I was really going back and trying to watch this. And it got me hooked on watching older programs with my dad too, like comedies with my father. I'm trying to think of the Gomer Pyle, right? Beverly Hillbillies. I was really getting into all of that stuff because that's stuff he watched growing up. But anyways, so more on this, more on Groucho Marx. His nickname Groucho. There's a couple different explanations. He has said at least on 2 or 3 occasions that or at least he's confirmed that he was kind of a moody person at times. And so Groucho, meaning he was kind of grouchy. There are other explanations that, you could, depending on, where you heard it, and you may follow. But I thought we talked real quickly about the other brothers. So Chico.
Let's stick on Groucho for a minute, because it was interesting. So I'm thinking that when you listed the comedians that you had him up there, that you had put him up there, where you weren't really talking stylistically, you were just talking about where he fell in amongst the greatest comedians of all time.
Yes, because he doesn't his comedy is not the same. Like he's not he can be a physical comedic actor, but he's not.
No, he wasn't.
Best,
that was
right.
Harpo's job, right? Like he didn't do that, right?
Right.
It was a vaudeville troupe, and he was the guy. He was the biting wit of that group. He was the satire, social commentary of the group. So for me, Groucho Marx was always the first George Carlin, the first Dennis Leary, the type of comedian that wasn't scared to talk about social issues while he was making films. Each one of the films that they made, at least up until this point, right? Because Duck Soup's probably the last of those. It's definitely not my favorite of Groucho Marx's films, but up until that point, each one of those was a slice, almost like a satirical look at something different. Duck Soup being about, government. You had another one that, talked about the lunacy of the education system. One that just talked about Americana and healthcare. They were tackling deep social issues using comedy. Right. And I think that's lost on a lot of people that can't see the context of this film or these films. For homework, you had us watch this movie, and I know you're going to talk a little about the brothers here shortly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had us watch Duck Soup, and I will say that Duck Soup is not my favorite Marx Brothers film. That's probably Night at the Opera. This is good, but the issue I have with this is that when I watch this, I watch it and I have an appreciation for the genre, right? Like I love black and white movies. Mm-hmm. I love them. I love movies that couldn't depend on special effects. It was about storytelling. It was about character development. And for this, when I watch it and I don't think that it's overly funny, only because of the way that they set it up, right? So they use a lot of non sequitur format whenever especially Groucho. Groucho does bits, and his bits don't advance the story, right? A lot of times he's just doing his thing. It doesn't really matter what's happening in the context of the story. In Duck Soup, I think you see this a lot. And I think what most people lose when they watch the film is they forget that people weren't, filmmakers were still trying to figure out how to make films. Their only experience in making comedies was vaudevillian theater, which is where the Marx Brothers came from. Mm-hmm. In fact, they went from vaudeville to Broadway to cinema. And so there's weird things in timing that don't make sense to us. Like you might think it's awkward that Groucho's pausing after a line. Well, he's pausing to wait for the audience to laugh.
Yeah.
Because that's what they did back then. Yeah. Right. But for us, it's like, oh man, their timing is terrible. Like it feels a little disjointed. But unless you look at it through that lens, it won't make sense to you. But yeah, go on, talk about the brothers.
Yeah, we'll come back to the movie too. But so Chico was Chico. He was kind of a womanizer, chasing women. That's where he got his name. Harpo, he played the harp. That one's pretty self-explanatory. There was Gummo, and there's a couple of different origins for his name. They seem to all be kind of based around the fact that he wore gumshoes or some of these rubber-soled shoes in some way. So that's where his origin came from. And then Zeppo, Groucho says it was named after Zeppelins that were flying in around the time. I think it was Chico I think it may have been Chico, who was the oldest, said that they used to have a monkey in one of their acts called Mr. Zippo. And since Zeppo was the youngest of the boys, they just kind of called him Mr. Zeppo after the monkey. Eventually turned into Zeppo instead of Zippo, but who knows if that's true or not. Yeah, to your point, they started out doing stage and song and different types of acts. It's funny enough, they were in Nacogdoches, or was it Nacogdoches? Somewhere in Texas, when they realized that they were more popular making fun of the times, doing satire comedy, to your point. And it was Groucho Marx, of all people, that had the line that really, there's a story where they were doing an act and somebody's mule left or something that caused everybody to run out, and he got really pissed off when all the audience came back. He made a comment about Texas and how it sucked, and I'm paraphrasing. He basically was slamming them, but they all thought it was funny, and that's where they were like, okay, we really kind of got something here in terms of what their style was going to be. His comedy and his writing, and I've read 2 of his books. Again, I'm a huge Groucho Marx fan. I've read 2 of his novels, and he's got a couple of them, but I can't get enough of how he spoke. It's all linguistic comedy, right? The way his satire, the way he spoke, a lot of the jokes are right up my alley, where he'll lay them out, and it's few seconds, sometimes days before you realize where the punchline was. It makes you kind of really think. I love that kind of humor. And to your point, it's kind of like the George Carlin, right? He's kind of up there as well. I think about Carson's writers at the time, not Johnny Carson himself. I don't want to take anything from Johnny Carson because he was a great comedian as well, but he had some of the best talent writing for him. And a lot of the jokes that he was doing on that show were very in that same vein, where they were more cerebral, I guess, more than physical kind of comedy type things.
Yeah, Roger Ebert interviewed him when he was in his 80s for Esquire magazine, right? And he said he was still incredibly sharp and witty, that he was just firing off jokes. He interviewed him twice over a 2-week period. And the way that he described it, he was like, he told so many jokes, and in typical fashion, there was no sense in me. There's no sense in me in this article paraphrasing what he said. I would have to quote them. But even if I quoted them, it wouldn't make any sense, because if it wasn't said in the Groucho Marx delivery style, you would lose it in translation.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Here are the 4 primary ones. You got Zeppo, Harpo, Chico, and Groucho there at the end. We're showing some pictures here of these.
So
guys.
Very distinct style for each brother, right? So Zeppo, largely the straight man. We're going to talk about Duck Soup in a bit. That was the last time that he appeared with the other brothers. So then this guy was basically Teller from Penn and Teller.
Yeah.
He doesn't say anything at all, ever.
And he did speak, by the way, if anybody's wondering whether he was a mute. He was not a mute. He just was great at physical comedy and realized he was better at not speaking and doing the physical stuff, which in Duck Soup, I think he does a great job. Well, in all the movies, he does a great job. He's very, very physical and uses facial expressions and features to kind of convey a lot of that comedy as well.
Yeah, they almost break them out a bit, right? So when Groucho's on scene, that this is going to be, you better have your ears open, because he's going to make about 700 jokes.
Yeah.
When the other 2 brothers were on stage together, you knew it was going to be some kind of slapstick type of comedy, a la Three Stooges comedy. There was going to be visual and practical. Although I guess the other brother was kind of like an Italian caricature for the most part, right?
That's Chico.
Yeah.
I mean, Chico and Garpo always teamed up together. They were always against Groucho in some way, whatever the freaking movie was. But he was kind of a middle. He had a lot of physical stuff, but then he had a lot of it was mostly play on words because of his language, right? He was always Italian, like dollars, taxes. Hey, I got an uncle who lives in Dallas, Texas, right? And I don't do that line any justice, but I laugh every time I hear it because he's using his accent to make a joke, although he didn't have an accent. Let's see. So anyways, these are the Marx Brothers. I thought we talked really quickly about the legacy of him. He went on to do a TV show called You Bet Your Life. This was a quiz show. They would bring contestants on. It started with Groucho talking to them about, let me go. There you go. That's You Bet Your Life. He would talk to them about their lives, and he'd make jokes, and he was kind of pre-fed some jokes at times that he would try to work in. And one of the gags one of the bits in this TV show or quiz show was he would try to get them to say a secret word. So they would do the secret word ahead of the show. He would try to coerce them into saying the secret word. And if they did, this chicken would come down. And I got a picture of the chicken here, and this chicken looks like Groucho Marx. It would come down, and they would get extra money for $100. That show ran from 1947 all the way to 1960. And at the end of that very last season, I think they changed it to the Groucho Show. They just called it what it is.
So was that a chicken or is it a duck?
It was said it was a chicken.
That looks more like a chicken.
Duck.
Yeah, a chicken doesn't have a bill like that. That's a duck.
I'll concede that. Here's some of the influences. So Gomez from the Addams Family was a character. He's got the mustache. He's got the cigar. Sometimes the way he would look, the visual stuff there. I mean, he came from a lot of different inspirations, but this Groucho Marx's character was one of them. Bugs Bunny. There's this, which is a little bit more subtle, right? He's walking around. He's got the walk down, and we didn't even talk about the physical traits, the character traits that kind of really make Groucho Marx stand out. The smear grease of eyebrows, the smear grease mustache, the glasses, the cigar, and then that walk, the infamous walk of him kind of lunging and leaning forward as he walks. And you can see, I've got a picture of Bugs Bunny, and he does the same thing with his carrot. He says "What's up, Doc?" and it's almost kind of in that same tone. Mel Blanc was pulling from the Groucho Marx characters. There is a carbon copy of one of the lines that Bugs Bunny's known for saying, which is, "Of course, this means war." of course, this means war. He would say that in the cartoons. That's lifted right out of Duck Soup, where the Rufus T. Firefly, the character that Groucho plays, says that line in there. And then you talked about Queen, Night of the Opera. Queen's a huge Marx Brothers, at least Freddie Mercury was, and they named two of their albums after it. So Night at the Opera and A Day at the Races are both names of movies for the Marx Brothers. They're two albums that were put out by Queen. And then the most iconic one, I wouldn't say iconic, but it's almost a carbon copy, is the Stork from Vlasic Pickles. They even had the tagline, that's the best pickle I ever heard. And he would come on there and fling the pickle around. Obviously that was directly from Groucho Marx as well.
Huh. There's a lot of those, like Alice Cooper's album, his greatest hit album has Groucho Marx on the cover. And yes. Elton John's song, Don't Shoot Me, I'm Just the Piano Player, is a Groucho Marx line.
Yeah, and I didn't put them all in here.
There's billions of them.
There really are. But we did watch Duck Soup. So as maybe a different viewpoint of the movie, this is my favorite movie. My favorite comedy movie of all time is Duck Soup. It is a movie.
Wow.
Yeah, it is a movie that I will go back to and watch when I'm wrapping presents or doing something where I just want the TV on and I want to be able to listen to something that seems familiar, is something that I enjoy. This is the movie that I'll go to. I own this on DVD, I own it on Blu-ray, and I have the digital version. I don't know why I have so many copies. And then I've got a collection of all the Marx Brothers movies that it's included in there as well.
How long have we been friends? Like forever?
Yep.
Like forever.
Yep. That's the cool thing about the show. We're
talked about this before. Yes. I have never, ever heard that before. That is mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, it is my favorite.
Best favorite ever. Comedy.
Favorite comedy all time. It is my favorite all time.
Wow.
I've got a couple pictures here. This is the intro, the picture of the beginning. This is my favorite scene from Duck Soup, where they get back at the lemonade stand guy, and Harpo takes his shoes off and runs up there and starts sloshing around inside the lemonade. I mean, I'm in tears when this happens. This is a bit that kind of happens throughout where Harpo plays another character who just happens to be the same, looks exactly the same, but he would drive Rufus T. Firefly to different places, and Rufus T. Firefly jumps in the sidecar of a motorcycle, and they never get anywhere. Every time something happens, something different happens where Harpo leaves and Groucho stays, and then at one point, I think Groucho takes off, but Harpo stays. So it's, again, they just ran this gag like 3 or 4 times throughout the movie. This is a scene that as a kid I loved. I still love it. This is the mirror scene. So this is where the physical comedy came in. There was no mirror there, obviously. But they did a great job of doing that mirror. And this is one of those techniques, right? When we go into theater class, they teach you to do. But it's the more interesting thing is once you put that smear grease on any one of the brothers, they all look like Groucho Marx. And they use that and this is the first time they actually show it too. Like prior to this, we didn't know what he was using for that, for the look of the eyebrows and the mustache. He used to put on prosthetic or fake mustaches and fake eyebrows, and he didn't like the way the glue felt or something like that, and so he was like getting tired of it, and so he just did that, and it became his look for that character going forward. And this is the very end. Again, I wanted to break this down a lot more, but just because of time and all that, I didn't think it was probably the best thing to do. And then finally, so these are the 2 books that I've read. Groucho and Me, this is an autobiography of him. It really gets into his personal life and growing up with the brothers and what mom and dad were like and all of that, as you would expect. Great book. And then Memories of a Mangy Lover. This is a Mangy Lover. This is really good stuff. This is a collection of stories and personal experiences. And you think about Groucho Marx, you think about the life that he led, the time period that he lived in, as early as 1915 all the way up through when did he pass? 1970? I forget. 77, somewhere around there. But if you think about all the major events that happen in his lifespan, there's some great stories there. He's got a lot of great stories, and so he's got these collected in that novel as well. And just quickly, I'm not going to argue with you about whether Duck Soup is a good movie or not.
Oh, I didn't say that. I didn't say it wasn't a good movie. It's not my favorite. Yeah,
no, I get it. It ranks number 85, AFI's greatest movie all time from 97. It ranks number 5 in the greatest laugh movies of all time, which is comedies. They redid that in 2017, like a 10-year anniversary to kind of rank all the films again. It actually moved up from 85 into the number 60 spot.
But similar to our telling of The Wizard of Oz, not successful. A complete box office bomb, Duck Soup. In fact, so much that they had to they left the studio. It was the last movie they made with that studio. They thought they would never make another film after that. Were signed to a new studio where they started making what is considered probably more digestible comedy for the masses, but definitely less of the wit that, in probably your opinion and mine, made them great.
Yeah.
Right? Because before this, they were off leash. Right? I think it's hard to watch this movie in context. We've talked about it before, in historical context. In the era that these jokes are told, they are incredibly risque. Like, it's not for someone who was raised with internet and, at their fingertips can see every vice in all of its glory. At this time, that wasn't available. I mean, we were a religious country at the time, and the idea of you making jokes that sexualize women and all of the jokes that he makes, even in Duck Soup, probably would have made it past the censors if the censors could keep up with the wit. Because in a lot of cases, I mean, they're like triple entendres. They're like drop behind things. He was brilliant in that.
Yeah. Yeah. No disagreement there. And then what I thought we just kind of end on. He's got a number of quotes, and if you read these books, some of them come from these books as well. The Groucho and Me, and what was it? Memories of a Mangy Lover. He's got a couple other books that he wrote as well, which we won't get into. I think Beds is another one, but there are some other ones too that I want to kind of end on. And some of these, I was actually talking to somebody about these and reading them today, and they were cracking up. So it made me feel better that they still hold up very well. But just quickly, it says, if a black cat crosses your path, it signifies that the animal is going somewhere. I intend to live forever or die trying. Only one man in 1,000 is a leader of men. The other 999 follow women. I have nothing but respect for you and not much of that. Learn from the mistakes of others. You can never live long enough to make them all yourself. From the moment I picked up your book, I couldn't put it down. I was convulsed with laughter. Someday I'd intend to read it. When you're in jail, a good friend will be trying to bail you out. A best friend will be in the cell with you saying, damn, that was fun. And then my favorite outside of the, a good place to get a meal quote is the one that says, outside of a dog, a book is a man's best friend. Inside of a dog, it's too dark to read. And that's just, it kind of encapsulates the comedy, right? Those types of things, you hear them and you have to actually sit there and think about them a little bit. And that's the one thing I loved about him. And whether it was on screen or whether it was off screen, this is what this guy did just naturally. This came natural to him, and why he is he is my favorite, like, comedian, comedy, funny person of all time. So, yeah.
Excellent. Well, I will say that he is probably the most quotable comic of all time. But I always wondered if he, and, not to get you all riled up, of whether he benefited from being one of the few vaudevillian actors that transitioned to speakies at the time. He got to see hundreds and thousands of bits, but you can tell that when he is just doing stuff improv off the cuff, he is brilliant at it. My favorite quote by Groucho Marx is, well, those are my principles. And if you don't like it, well, I've got others. Yeah.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode. And then, so next week, we've got 17. I don't know how we're going to get through that one. That's got like Saturday Night Live, Pink Panther, Indiana Jones, Wrath of Khan, Silence of the Lambs. I think we'll get into some more serial discussion, which will be fun. We've actually got a serial channel on our Discord that's pretty hot and heavy, where people go back and forth on favorite cereals, people posting pictures of breakfast cereals that are out and new. Some of them are absolutely disgusting, but we'll definitely break all that down here next week. Of course, if you'd like to follow us, we try to do the show every Thursday. We've been pretty good so far. Every Thursday night, 9 p.m. Central. You can also follow us on social media at The Basement RPO. And please, if you want to subscribe to this show, please do so. Hit the subscribe button, the like button, all on YouTube. And the podcast will be out sometime next week. So please sign up for that so you don't miss an episode if you want to hear the auditory. The podcasts actually are a little bit different because I take these tracks, mix them together, and then we put a music bed and sound effects bed and everything else underneath the show. So trying to give you a different experience than you do from coming and visiting us with the live show. So something else to look forward to with that one. Okay. Any final thoughts on anything we've talked about before we get out of here?
No, it was, you know what I'm surprised at? I'm now officially convinced that if we had an IHOP menu, we could talk about it for 2 hours because there is not a lot of meat in chapter 16 and we're well over 2 hours. That doesn't even make any sense. Yeah. I remember reading this chapter and when I finished, I was like, well, there's a 20-minute show.
Nope. We found a way and persevered. All right. We'll see you guys next week when we cover chapter 17.
The views and opinions of the Basement hosts are of our own and are not in any way affiliated with Random House or Ernest Klein. All quotes, music, sounds, trademark, and copyrighted material referenced in the show are owned by the respectful companies and creators and are used by the Basement as fair use for entertainment purposes only. It would take me a month to read this whole disclaimer, but sad to say, I don't have that kind of time.